very good morning to you and welcome to the St. Lucia House of Assembly. Today, March 30th, Thursday, for the continuation of the debate on the estimates of expenditure presented by Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Philip J. Pierre to the tune of $1,856,719,000 as a charge against the consolidated fund and other funds of the state of St. Lucia. Yesterday, when we adjourned, when the House was suspended, we had heard from the member for Cassery South in the person of the Senior Minister Stephenson King, the member for Ancillary Canaries, the Honourable Wayne Girard, the member for Vieux-Fort South in the person of former Prime Minister Kenny D. Anthony, the member for Cassery Central, Richard Frederick, the Honourable Richard Frederick, the member for Labrie, closed the session last night. The member for Labrie, the Honourable Alva Baptiste, who is also St. Lucia's Foreign Minister. We adjourned at approximately 8 o'clock last night, or thereabout, just after 8, and the member for Cassery South, the Honourable Ernest Hilaire, who is also the leader of government business, had not taken the floor, and the Prime Minister's rebuttal is also on the cards. So today, Friday, unprecedented. The budget, that debate usually lasts 2 days, but we into a third day when we will hear from the member for Cassery South, who is the Minister for Tourism, Creative Affairs, Information and Broadcasting, the Honourable Ernest Hilaire, who is also the leader of government business, and the Prime Minister will sum up. Yesterday, the Prime Minister, in opening the debate, said that in the past, the leader of the opposition, that is, has always been the first to respond in order of speakers to the presentation of the estimates of expenditure as presented by the Minister of Finance. He said that when he was Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, or when he was, yes, opposition leader and leader of I repeat this, the Prime Minister said when he was leader of the opposition, he always went along with the tradition or convention of being the first to respond to the estimates. He says that way back on the 26th of April, when the estimates of expenditure was presented back then, he responded to the estimates immediately. And that took place on the 26th of April 2017. He responded that same day. In 2018, the estimates were presented on the 21st of March. And then leader of the opposition, Philip J. Pierre, responded immediately. 2019, April 10, that is when it was presented. April 10, 2019. Philip J. Pierre, as leader of the opposition, responded immediately. April 29th, 2020. Philip J. Pierre, as leader of the opposition, responded immediately. 2021, March 16th, Philip J. Pierre responded immediately. I have been covering House of Assembly meetings dating way back to the early 80s, about 1980. And it has been customary that the leader of the opposition responds to the estimates immediately following the presentation by the Minister of Finance. I have seen, and I have been here to see Julian Hunt, as leader of the opposition, respond to Prime Minister Compton's estimates. I've seen Neville Snack, Sir Neville Snack, former Governor General, who was leader of the opposition in a government of the Labour Party, respond immediately. I have seen Louis George, who was a sole member in the Parliament as a leader of the opposition, representing the United Workers' Party. I saw him respond immediately. I have seen Asin James as leader of the opposition respond to Kenny Anthony's estimates of expenditure immediately. So there has been convention, and I can attest to that because I have been here. Just to remind you that we should start very soon, and we are here today because the member for Castries South is yet to make his presentation, and the Prime Minister to rebut to the Speaker's presentations during this debate. Yesterday, after the Leader of the Opposition presented made his presentation, I should say, he immediately left the chamber. That's about the time that the Honourable Richard Frederick, the member for Central Castries, took to his feet. Immediately, the Honourable member for Central Castries took to his feet. The Leader of the Opposition, having completed his presentation, immediately left the chamber. And we hoped to see him sometime during the course of the morning. But like I said before, yesterday when we started off with Castries North, followed by Ancillary Canneries, followed by Vieux-Fort South, followed by Meacoud South, followed by Castries Central, and Labrie. The Honourable Alva Baptiste closed the session. We are awaiting the entrance of the Speaker, who should be here in a while. We do have a quorum. Seated in the chamber at the moment is the Prime Minister with his Attorney General, his Deputy Prime Minister and Leader of Government Business, who is supposed to open the debate this morning. We also have with us the Honourable Sean Edward, who is the Minister for Education and the member for Dennery North, the member for Dennery South, who is the of Vieux-Fort North, that is, who is also the Minister for Education is here, the Minister for National Security in the person of Dr. Virginia Albert Poyot. She is the member for Babono. I beg your pardon, Babono. I don't think Michael Gasper would forgive me for mistaking Babono with any other part of the island. He is not with me today. He is unwell, and we wish him all the best. Also here is the member for Grosile, the Honourable Kenson Casimir, former Prime Minister Kenny Anthony, and the member for Choiseul is also here. The Speaker is now making his way into the chamber, and so we'll go straight over as the proceedings are about to start.
Let us pray. Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all of our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public weal, peace and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all evermore. Amen. Good morning, honorable members. Before we proceed, let me ask you to join with me in wishing the Deputy Speaker and member from Mico North a happy birthday. It is my understanding the invitations for the party will be sent about 12 o'clock. Celebration. Members, it has also been brought to my attention that one or two ministers who have spoken may wish to rise again. Let me advise you that that will only be done, or could only be done, after everybody else has spoken and before the rebuttal by the Minister for Finance. So please do your timing properly. If you don't get it right, it would mean the debate will be closed before you can do it. Members, when we rose, the question before the House was that the House of Assembly do adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2023-2024 in the sum of $1,856,719,000 as a charge against the Consolidated Fund and other funds of the State of St. Lucia. Leader of Government Business and member for Castries South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, of course, let me extend my personal birthday wishes to the Deputy Speaker and member for Mico North. I think he knows we're all waiting for that celebration later. So I trust Parliament is well prepared, Mr. Speaker. Also, my colleagues who welcome the presence of the member for Castries Southeast. We all know what he's going through, and it was really inspiring to see him in Parliament, ensuring that he keeps his commitment to report to the people who gave him the power to be here and to represent them. Of course, Mr. Speaker, later today I will be attending the celebration of the life of an outstanding Labour Party stalwart, Bianca Alexander from Castries South, top of the Mon. She's had a long, distinguished association with the Central Labour Party, having been a platform speaker, canvasser, member of my women's group. So, Mr. Speaker, it is a day when we really have to reflect on, our contributions to politics and what it means. And certainly she is somebody who made a contribution that we're all proud of, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to express my support for the estimates presented by the member from Castries East and Prime Minister. I'm also pleased to address this debate as the duly elected parliamentary representative for Castries South and Minister of Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture, Information and Broadcasting. I start by thanking the Almighty for yet another year of service to the people of my constituency and country. I'm eternally grateful to my constituency group, women and youth groups they have chosen me to represent Castries South, a very special constituency. It is the birthplace of the St. Lucia Labour Party and the constituency of our founding leader, Sir George F.L. Charles. It is also the constituency of outstanding leaders such as John Stanley Odlum and His Excellency Dr. Robert K. Lewis. My constituents and groups are my strength. I know, Mr. Speaker, sometimes they are annoyed with me and sometimes even disappointed, but we both know that the love is real and deep. I know, Mr. Speaker, of their commitment to the dream that we will transform Castries South, and believe me, we will achieve this dream. Castries South will never be the same again after this term of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Never, Mr. Speaker. We promise to make George F.L. Charles, John Odlum, and Robert Lewis proud of our stewardship. I'm also grateful, Mr. Speaker, for the support of my permanent secretary and the staff of the ministry. They have been outstanding in their dedication, support, and hard work, and so much so that it inspires me every day to work harder. I'm also thankful to the boards, management, and staff of the Citizenship by Investment Program, Invest in Lucia, Cultural Development Foundation, St. Lucia Tourism Authority, the Community Tourism Agency, and Events Company of St. Lucia, which all fall under my leadership and oversight. I must single out the board members. These dedicated professionals all give so much of their time and effort to ensure the proper functioning of the agencies which they oversee. Mr. Speaker, the presentation by the member from Castries East on the estimates for the financial year 23-24 was a masterclass, Mr. Speaker. It was. I sat and I listened, and I felt proud to be part of this team, to be part of this government under the leadership of Honorable Philip J. Pierre. Mr. Speaker, it was an estimate for the time. It is a reflection of what we need at this present period in our history. And last night when I got home, before I fell asleep, I tried to imagine if we were in opposition and the leader of the opposition had been Prime Minister and had presented such estimates, how would we have responded to it? How would I want to respond to it? And I must tell you, I had an extreme difficulty trying to figure out exactly how would I have attacked these estimates. Because you cannot be vexed and annoyed and criticize raising more revenue than you expected. You cannot be annoyed and criticize a government that paid down so much on the debt that has been crippling this country. You cannot criticize a government that has done so much to put the people first with practical programs. You cannot criticize a government that has sought to control and curtail excessive spending. What would you criticize? Just tell me, Mr. Speaker. But I want you to reflect, Mr. Speaker, for a moment on what is the challenge facing this government at this time. The Minister of Finance has 3 objectives for every decision that he makes in terms of the fiscal and financial management of this country. First of all, he must stabilize the economy. But whilst he's stabilizing the economy, he has to ensure that there is a path of sustained growth and development. So he's stabilizing, but whilst he's stabilizing, he must make sure there's a sustained path of growth. But not just growth, but growth with equity. So it's not just speaking of the economy grew by 12% or 10%, but he must make sure that that growth trickles down and that so many people benefit from it. So there must be growth with development. And at the same time, he must provide immediate short-term relief to the people. So think about that. How do you achieve all 3 objectives at the same time? Stabilize the economy. That means reducing debt. It means generating a surplus. And one other things, at the same time, make sure there is growth, because you must have growth for the country to prosper. But even in the country getting richer through growth, we must make sure as many people also benefit from it. So that's why you have the MSME and the youth economy and the CTA. And then at the same time, we must take care of our people. How can he do that? But what he did in his presentation, in a masterful way, is to show how he's achieving it. We cannot boast we've achieved all of them per excellence, but in his presentation, he showed you how every single one was being achieved. And under the policy statement, we will examine this in greater detail. This time it was just the figures. And Mr. Speaker, I want to point out, and you and I have had discussions on this, and maybe the member from Beaufort South, who's very learned on those matters, I still believe we are doing this thing backward. We really have to say what's the policy, the rationale. When it is approved by the House, the technical people put the figures to it, and then we debate the figures. We are debating the figures, but we cannot really debate why we have the figures as they are. We have to debate the figures, approve it, and then after we come and we approve the policy that guided the figures we already approved. You and I have had debates about that over the years, and we've not agreed. But it's something, and I still believe the English Parliament has it right. You do the policy first and then the figures. Because many times you want to explain why the figures are there, but you have to leave that for the policy debate. But I contrast, Mr. Speaker, what the member from Castries East did with what we got yesterday from the member from Mico South and the leader of the opposition. You must contrast it. And maybe the failings of the member from Mico South must be excused. Maybe. Because I started off by showing you how difficult it would have been to criticize what was presented by the member for Castries East. He had an extremely difficult task. But these are the moments when he has to rise to the occasion and to show his real worth as a leader, Mr. Speaker. And I think he failed miserably. The member from Strozel Saltibus tried in his own way to ask questions, and valid questions, and I'll provide him with some answers today. But rather than the member from Mico South and leader of the opposition asking questions and exploring alternatives, he got low, dirty, and in the trenches. That's what he did, Mr. Speaker. He tried his best, Mr. Speaker, to be a drama queen in the hope of attracting attention. Then he tried, Mr. Speaker, to show that he had empathy, hoping that people will believe that he cares. And when none worked, Mr. Speaker, he got disrespectful, and then he finally walked away with his ball because, Mr. Speaker, he was too scared to stay in the chamber and to get a response to all the things that he said. But give me a few minutes, Mr. Speaker, if you may, for me to just reflect on a couple points before I go into the substance of the estimates as it relates to my ministry. The member from Mico South claimed that we don't care because we earn more money from excise tax than we expected. That we did not earn as much as we wanted from the excise tax on petroleum, but overall we earned more than we expected, and that we did not care about people. And he wanted to chastise us, Mr. Speaker, that we don't care about people. And I want you, Mr. Speaker, to just look at our record for the last 18 months. Not an exhaustive look. Just look at some of the things we've done for the last 18 months. Not the continuation of existing programs, but the commencement of new initiatives. And tell me, Mr. Speaker, whether that's a reflection of a government that does not care. One of the first things we did, we got elected July 26. Immediately, Mr. Speaker, under the leadership of the member for Denry North, Mr. Speaker, Minister of Education, we increased the back-to-school support. I cannot speak of a very long period in Parliament, but for my 5 years in opposition, I can tell you, I got nothing near what I got for my back-to-school program. And I know from some of my other colleagues, they said they had never gotten so much support to assist their constituents to help children go back to school. immediately, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And why? Because we knew of the effects of COVID on working people in this country and even the middle class. Even the middle class. Immediately, within weeks, Mr. Speaker, we found the money, Mr. Speaker, to provide support for back to school. Immediately, Mr. Speaker, immediately, the Prime Minister made monies available for us to purchase food vouchers and to distribute them. And I hope the member from Strozel do get vouchers when they are made available, Mr. Speaker. Again, not enough. I agree with you, Honorable Member. I don't get enough. I must tell you. Honorable Member, you are right. I still believe I don't get enough. And I was jealous that Babuno seemed to have gotten more than me. But that's another story. But Mr. Speaker, immediately, Mr. Speaker, without even earning those excess revenue in excise tax, monies were made available. Then the Minister of Education, the member from Denver North, with the Prime Minister, decided that school fees is an issue that has to be dealt with. And they were right. Too many times parents come to us, children cannot graduate because they owe the school fees. And that is a problem. And we knew it was COVID. And we knew for a lot of those students, they would not have been able to pay school fees for the last 2 years. How would they graduate? And immediately, Mr. Speaker, we made sure that all school fees are paid in the public schools. That's for a government that do not care, Mr. Speaker. Then, Mr. Speaker, the price of flour started to rise. First, supply chain issues, and then later on, the war between Ukraine and Russia, the two largest producers of wheat in the world, Ukraine and Russia. And the price of flour started to rise. What did we do? We subsidized it, Mr. Speaker. Subsidize it. And I think the member from Sufre said, presently, $94 on every bag is being subsidized by government. I'm sure I heard that figure. If I'm wrong, I can be corrected. $94 on every bag that is sold, government puts in. Think about it. And we don't care, Mr. Speaker, that we have excess excise tax and we are wasting it, Mr. Speaker. Subsidized fuel, Mr. Speaker. When the price was getting so high, we tried to maintain it, and we provided the subsidy until it became unsustainable, and we had to allow it to shift, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the laptop per child, in all the difficulty that we were facing because of COVID, think about it. How would the children really learn when you're doing virtual learning if they did not have laptops? Because the laptops had been stopped by the previous government. And yes, they provided e-books. Let's not debate whether they worked or they did not work, but they were not really suitable. And we got complaints from thousands of parents that it was just not working for them. And someday, Mr. Speaker, our education officials will have to do a study on the effect on COVID on the learning of children in this country. 2 lost years, Mr. Speaker. And if they had laptops, maybe it would have been mitigated. And what did we do? We commenced immediately the program of 1 laptop per child. And we are a government that do not care. And that the leader of opposition, in his pretense, was so incensed, he almost threw the podium over because he claimed we spent $1 million on repairing something. I can't remember what it was. And then, Mr. Speaker, when we had provided the laptops, we felt we had to ensure that families that could not have internet had to have internet. And we approached the telecom companies only to find out from them that they had submitted to the previous government proposals for telecommunication services to poor families, and nothing had been done about it. Nothing had been done about it. That had been an outstanding program on the desk of the last government during COVID, when poor people needed to have internet for the children to learn. What did we do? We finalized the negotiations, and we now have the Flow bundle where you can get internet, you can get your landline and cable TV for $20 a month. And we are a government that do not care, Mr. Speaker. Do not care. The distress fund, Mr. Speaker. Immediately we restored the distress fund. From the same person who says we did not care was the one who stood up in this honorable house and said we do not need a distress fund because people are supposed to insure their plywood homes. Go and find insurance. Now, Mr. Speaker, how do you insure a plywood house? Tell me, really? That's what he said, Mr. Speaker. And he stopped the distress fund, started by the member for Beaufort South. We restored it, Mr. Speaker, because too many poor people needed help after a fire, and they could not get it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 18 months, we've started the one scholarship per household program. And how many scholarships have we given, Honorable Member? Over 200 scholarships so far has been given by this government. Both SLASPA, SAFA and university. In less than 18 months, Mr. Speaker. And you know, it is specific because we are saying this has to go to households where nobody in that household has had a chance to get tertiary education. Think about that, how transformational that is. Families where they have not had anyone who's gone to university to get a degree or to go to tertiary, have any tertiary education, we've given over 200 in less than 18 months, and we don't care. Mr. Speaker, we launched a community tourism agency. What is it all about? It's about saying that resort-based tourism cannot be the future of tourism in our country. The future of tourism has to be community-based experiences where the visitors can come into the communities and to spend and enjoy all that St. Lucia has to offer. And we've put in, Mr. Speaker, over $15 million in that program. We are giving loans and grants to people who cannot qualify for financing. Never before in the history of St. Lucia. And that exists now, and we don't care, Mr. Speaker. We've launched the MSME, Mr. Speaker, a couple of weeks ago under the Ministry of Commerce to make monies available to micro enterprise to help them sustain themselves and to get going, Mr. Speaker. Transformational. All within 18 months, and we don't care, Mr. Speaker. We've launched a youth economy agency. I can take my entire hour to speak about the youth economy and what it means to young people in St. Lucia. And we do not care, Mr. Speaker. We don't care. I can speak, Mr. Speaker, about support to the police because we do face challenges in the communities. This did not start in July 2021, but we've given the police support in a short space of time like never before, and we don't care, Mr. Speaker. Increasing subvention to civil society. You heard the Prime Minister last year and again this year restoring the subvention to the National Trust, and we don't care, Mr. Speaker. Think about it, in less than 18 months. But compare that with a member from Miku South. How much money did we pay Range? An investor who came into this country to build a hotel ends up leaving with about $30 million. Did he care? Think of what that money could have done. And he contests is not 30, it's less than 30. But whether it's 30, it's 20, it's 10, it should never have happened. And if you cared, you would make sure it did not happen. Health City came on, Mr. Speaker. Health City came on in the middle of COVID. When everybody is concerned about taking care of people who are affected by COVID, you would pay $1 million a month for 24 months to give us consultancy on how to manage a hospital. And you care? $24 million when we had a local committee managing the transition aided by the French, and you cared, Mr. Speaker? The same person who closed the fisheries that have decimated the fisheries sector, Mr. Speaker. Today, fishermen are not even the same. Close Radio St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And you know what we have done? You can go online now, and Radio St. Lucia is being broadcast right now. Right now. And our plan is, it may not No, it's online, same 99.5. And we're hoping by the estimate, by the policy statement, we will be broadcasting for all of St. Lucia, hopefully, Mr. Speaker. Somebody who cares will pay out $7 million for vaccines without no systems in place as to whether we will even receive the vaccines. And my last meeting, I joined the Prime Minister. He was still arguing and fighting for the balance of the money to be paid to St. Lucia. And he cares. He cares. I won't even speak about Carbot and DSH, Mr. Speaker. I won't. Mr. Speaker, I heard him, the member, speak about Julian Alfred, Mr. Speaker. You know, and it's painful, painful. The member from Denry North was crucified. It was claimed how he used the resources of National Lodges Authority. But he was using it to help young people like Julian Alfred. When the United West Party came into power in 2016, they stopped it, Mr. Speaker. And I know the details because she's a constituent of mine. She doesn't live far from my constituency office. And I'm not going to go into all the details today. Leave that for another time, and I'm sure the member from Denry North can deal with it better. But Mr. Speaker, he will claim how we say we want to do things for Julian Alfred when we could not even have helped her in university. She has a scholarship in university, and she's still at university, but when she needed it in Jamaica, you cut $150 a month support for her. Think about that, Mr. Speaker, and you tell me that you care, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, the member from Mako South took the estimates yesterday. In a very malicious way, he's going through it and pointing out where you're supposed to have strategies and achievements and how it's empty. That means you all did nothing. Mr. Speaker, that's a feature of all estimates. A feature of all estimates. Some ministries give you detailed narratives of all their objectives and all their achievements, and some don't submit it on time. And the estimates are printed and it's not contained. I used to laugh at the last government when I used to go through the estimates and realize some of them are empty. But I'm not going to use that as the substance of my rebuttal to the Minister of Finance. That's the substance. Seriously? Come on, let's be real. Let's be real about that. Maybe the member from Strozel can teach him a thing or two. Because you know what the member from Strozel did? He looked at it. He saw an allocation, he saw what the objective was, how many passports would be processed, and he says, but not processed, housing. And he said there must be an error in that because if you had spent that amount for this, you could not have done X, Y, and Z. That's more constructive. That's constructive. But that's not what he does. He looks at grants and contributions and he says, look at tourism. Your grant moved from 12 million to about 23 million. Just wasting money. You're wasting money. But the Prime Minister in his presentation did say that tourism allocation has been increased to 8 million. Events company will get $4.5 million for jazz. When you add it, it's the exact difference. All he has to do is to go to a page in the estimates. I don't think he even knows how to read the estimates books. I don't think he knows how to read it. Because all he had to do was go to the grants and contribution page. He would see in 2022 to 2023 what was listed, and for this year what's listed. And he would see a difference. Simple. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be any economist or mixed degree, is whatever he is, to be able to do that, Mr. Speaker. It's a simple process. And Mr. Speaker, he speaks about CIP monies being spent on consultancies. I just wanted to share with you, Mr. Speaker, just a little data about CIP monies and how they were spent. Because, you know, he's saying a lot of things. Just to give you an idea, Mr. Speaker, of CIP monies and how they were spent. Mr. Speaker, for example, if I take you to, I'll give you just the last year, Mr. Speaker. Flour subsidy, $8.9 million. Same person who said we could have used the money to subsidize and chastising, we did not do it. It was done. 8.9 million, Mr. Speaker. Fuel subsidy, $4.97 million. Back pay in December 2022, $6 million. Back pay in March 2023, $11.5 million. And Mr. Speaker, contributed $34 million to debt payment, Mr. Speaker. You know, it doesn't take much, Mr. Speaker, to just ask. But you're accusing and claiming that you used to spend CIP money for projects in St. Lucia. Now, everybody knows that's not true. I'm not saying that monies were used improperly or anything. But I know we used to come to this house over and over, and we all knew that the money was going to deal with recurrent expenditure. So he now comes and accuses us of doing exactly what he was doing. Because there's a saying that evil says what evil does. So he's saying that's what we're doing, because that's what he used to do. That's what he used to do. But another policy statement will say some more about CIP, because we're going to take our CIP to an entirely different level, where it can now start building housing projects, start building roads, and be used directly to benefit the people of St. Lucia. But I will leave that for the Prime Minister to make the statement and for me to elaborate on it. But Mr. Speaker, let me end on the member from Miku South. And this one was hurtful yesterday. Hurtful, and I'll tell you why. When the member from Miku South described a young woman who's an entrepreneur in this country and who purchased lands as a non-entity, who has done nothing in her life, that one is probably the worst statement ever made by the member from Miku South.
Speaker, I don't know if the member would...
Member for Swizzle.
I don't know if the member would allow me to rise in the point of elucidation.
Please, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, when we left Parliament yesterday, I called the Leader of the Opposition and I indicated to him my discomfort in the expression that has been indicated by the member. And he indicated to me that that was not what he meant. He indicated to me that he meant that the person was a non-business entity. Whether or not the government would want to take it for that, but I should express exactly what he said to me, and I thought it was necessary to indicate that. Because the expression was, in my mind, very discomforting to me at the time, and I had to express it.
You know, member from Strozel, I'll continue my point, but let me just say to you, I admire your commitment to your party, to your team. But, honorable member, this does not make sense. It does not make sense. I know you probably feel you're obligated to say it, but let me just say to you, it does not make sense. Because she being a business entity is nonsensical, Mr. Speaker. He said she was a non-entity who had done nothing in her life as yet. You know, Mr. Speaker, in this honorable house, we have at least 3 other persons who were prime ministers, or one is a prime minister. In the case of the member from Castries North, I've known him many years and his commitment to youth and young people. We've spent many hours together working on youth programs, youth projects, and I know his commitment to youth and promoting youth. The present Prime Minister, just by his initiative, the youth economy, tells you about his commitment to young people in this country. The former Prime Minister, Dr. Anthony Fort South, I have never met anybody I've felt more committed to promoting young people. I can tell you that. Because of the opportunities he gave persons like myself and so many other young people. 3 other Prime Ministers, all have been committed to promoting youth and the cause of young people. And for the member from Miku South to stand, regardless of whether he thought she had not achieved anything in the business world, to describe her as a non-entity that has done nothing in her life is disgraceful, is disgusting, and we must decry it, Mr. Speaker. That there's no compromise on this. Mr. Speaker. None. You know, Mr. Speaker, I don't even want to quote his maybe I'll read exactly what he said. So I want to say this. First of all, Mr. Speaker, to have sold that land to a non-entity, nobody knows her. Who is she? Has she done any work in St. Lucia? Mr. Speaker, this is a young person, a young entrepreneur, a young lady, Mr. Speaker. And of all his comments, jackasses, backing dogs, I think this one is the most disrespectful one, Mr. Speaker. But let me move on, Mr. Speaker, and refer to page 357, subheading 072, Tourism Marketing Services, Mr. Speaker. St. Lucia Tourism Authority is being provided with $8 million, Mr. Speaker, for extra budgetary support for marketing for this financial year. Mr. Speaker, the St. Lucia Tourism Authority was funded via an approved budget under the tourism levy in the amount of $25,700,000 in estimates for this financial year, and a government subvention of $5 million. So they got a total of $30,700,000. The St. Lucia Tourism Authority anticipates a projection of collection in excess of the approved budget, totaling $28 million. In fact, they expect to collect, Mr. Speaker, $2.3 million more, Mr. Speaker. And that clearly states to you that the tourism industry is doing even better than we expected, Mr. Speaker, and earning above the projected amount, Mr. Speaker. So whilst, Mr. Speaker, the thrust of the government is to ensure that the tourism authority is to be dependent on the tourism levy, the government of St. Lucia wishes to broaden the use of the levy. Therefore, the levy will be used, Mr. Speaker, to support tourism development projects such as the community tourism program. Place specific focus on marketing our creative industry and culture, including the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, our cultural festivals, and the need for us now to engage in some strategic planning and strategic marketing, Mr. Speaker. And it's for that reason that this government has increased the subvention to $8 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Tourism Authority, as I said, is recording better than expected results, Mr. Speaker. And one of the reasons why St. Lucia is one of the success stories in the Caribbean is because of what the authority has done in the last year. It has launched what it called Collection des Pépites, Mr. Speaker, a collection of villas, hotels, beds, Mr. Speaker, cabaret crawl, Mr. Speaker, Lucian links, Mr. Speaker, a number of initiatives to ensure that St. Lucia stays in the forefront, Mr. Speaker. In the policy statement, I will speak a lot more about the numbers and the arrivals. But it was interesting yesterday to hear the member from Miku South say on one hand that the tourism industry is faltering, Mr. Speaker. It's faltering, that we are losing flights. And then the member for the senator, former Minister of Tourism, was on television and saying how St. Lucia was losing flights and our tourism industry was in jeopardy, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, the industry is performing better than we expected. Better than we expected. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we have lost some flights. And again, in the policy statement, I will go into detail. But what is interesting is that with even less seats, we have more people coming in. Wow. Can you imagine that? Less seats. Where we are really suffering, Mr. Speaker, is regional travel. Regional travel. In 2019, we had about 88,000 regional arrivals. Last year we had just over 45,000 or so. And if we had a kind of regional travel, Mr. Speaker, it would have been so much better for us. So we have lost some flights for sure, Mr. Speaker. Those flights were put on, and let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, in the policy statement I'll go into greater detail. Those flights were put on because many countries had not opened up yet. And therefore there was excess capacity from some airlines and they put on additional flights. And what I noted in the data Because, Mr. Speaker, you know, we would go and do our research. We on this side, we take our business seriously and we do our research. In all the flights that were withdrawn, St. Lucia was the last destination to lose it because we had been doing so well. So we have less seats, but we have more people coming in. We are earning more money from the levy than we had anticipated. And truth be told, Mr. Speaker, you can see throughout the length and breadth of this country that the tourism industry is not dying in St. Lucia. It is not, Mr. Speaker. And then we were told that fares are too high. And last week, I happened to have been at Roots America, and we met with one airline. And our opening line was, we get too many complaints about you. And the airline asked us, I can tell you it was JetBlue, what's the complaint? We said, well, the airfare, everybody's complaining they cannot travel the airfare. And the guy opened his computer and embarrassed us. He said, after bringing up his file, that March 2023 was the best month ever for JetBlue in St. Lucia. Their load factor was 95%. So he asked us, so who's complaining? Because more people are traveling at those high rates than ever before. Now, it really tells you what's happening in the market. You don't have to be any guru economist to understand what's happening. People are buying the tickets, even at the high rates. So do you expect them to drop their rates? If 95% load factor, why would you drop your rates? You're not 55% load factor, you're 95. So they have no interest in dropping their rates. And they will not bring on an additional flight to now cause their rates to drop. At some point, the numbers will be sufficiently high that they will bring on another flight, but we've not reached that point yet. But Mr. Speaker, in addition to we winning the world's leading honeymoon destination, for the first time ever, we won the Caribbean leading adventure destination. Now, is that the sign of a destination where tourism is faltering? But after having said all the criticisms, he then says, he then says, all the high numbers they're boasting of is we that caused it to happen. So on one hand, the industry is suffering and we're on the decline. But yet the high numbers you all have is because of UWP hard work. But let me just tell you something about statistics, Mr. Speaker. And it's something we have to note. In the latter years, the last 2 years of the Labour Party, that's between 2014, 2016, there was a slight decline in tourism arrivals. And the former minister, Lawrence Theophilus, was crucified for it. But nobody cared to say that St. Lucia's largest hotel, Club St. Lucia, had closed. So you took away 300 rooms out of the room stock. Obviously your numbers will decrease. Now the members from the previous government were boasting of the increases from about 2018, but they did not say that Royalton had opened and Harbour Club had opened, putting in about 400 plus rooms into the room stock. So, but they don't say that. But they will say, oh, under the Labour Party numbers were dropping, under the UWP all of a sudden numbers are rising. But there is a reason for that. I'm not saying hard work was not done by the Tourism Authority and the former minister. I would never say so. But sometimes, it's a lot more than that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on page 358, Information and Broadcasting, you will see for the procurement of equipment, $100,000, Mr. Speaker. Over the years, Mr. Speaker, the equipment of the GIS has significantly depleted. The ministry is trying now to restock and to upgrade. And Mr. Speaker, I notice you have modern cameras in your chambers. I'm not sure if it's GIS that provided it, Mr. Speaker, but I know GIS used to be here covering. I see you shaking your head, so I suspect Parliament probably paid for it. But Mr. Speaker, you know, GIS really needs some upgrade in their stock. The last time it happened was under the previous Labour Party Prime Minister, Dr. Anthony, where the Taiwanese embassy provided a substantial amount of equipment to GIS to upgrade it. They have already contributed $49,000 US. This estimates provide another 100,000 US to upgrade the GIS, Mr. Speaker. I've already mentioned, Mr. Speaker, that GIS has worked very hard to bring back Radio St. Lucia. We're presently testing it on digital, so we have RSL digital broadcast online now, and once we can get once we can resolve some of the capacity and logistics issues without putting a strain on central government, we will relaunch Radio St. Lucia once again, and St. Lucians will have a Radio St. Lucia they can be proud of. But we'll do it differently this time. Radio St. Lucia, the new Radio St. Lucia, will be a St. Lucia radio station. All the music must be St. Lucian. The programs must be public education. All local content. So if you want to have foreign music, you don't go to Radio St. Lucia. The Radio St. Lucia that will be relaunched will be all local content, Mr. Speaker, and is very heavily focused on public education and the dissemination of information that the public needs to be for the orderly operation of our society, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on page 561, heading 017, Culture and Creative Industries, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm really proud of the work that we've done in the last year for culture and creative industries, Mr. Speaker. Any St. Lucian will tell you, they had to have been proud to see what the Cultural Development Foundation and the ministry did, especially for Emancipation Month. For the first time, this Prime Minister said that he does not want emancipation celebrated the way it has been done in the past, that we have to give it greater prominence. And whereas we used to get about $20,000 a year for emancipation, we got about $200,000 plus for emancipation. And the CDF and Events Company of St. Lucia really made me feel good as a St. Lucian to be at the waterfront on August the 1st and to actually witness the parade that took place and the cultural performances that took place to herald in Emancipation Day. We went to Denry South, where the first heroine was unveiled, Petronille, Mr. Speaker, as a champion of the slave uprisings, Mr. Speaker. And that meant a lot. Throughout the country, Mr. Speaker, we encourage communities to organize activities to commemorate Emancipation Day. In Babono, in Monrepo, in ancillary canneries, throughout this country, Soufre, we had activities. And I can say to honorable members, this year, August, will be even bigger and better than it was for last year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the La Rose and La Marguerite last year, in this financial year, was extra special. Extra special. Again, ask any St. Lucian and they will tell you they had never seen so much of a focus given to those events. The La Rose Festival, Mr. Speaker, and some people criticize us saying it should be kept in the community and not be brought down into Castries, whatnot. Let me make it say to honorable members, the groups themselves said they wanted to be in Castries. They said they wanted to be in Castries. And they asked us to repeat it. And there's a reason why. Think about it. There are the traditionalists that will want us to remain in the community, and a small group enjoy it, and they really are the purists. But there's a new generation rising that want to mainstream the celebrations. And they believe when they are in Castries, in the middle of the workday, and when they parade around Castries, they said they felt good to see St. Lucians coming out of the business places, clapping them, waving them, people passing in vehicles, blowing their horns. They felt accepted and they felt appreciated. That they would not, and so right. So the solution now is how we can find both. And I've challenged the CDF and them to find a solution where you have both the community celebration, but we also have the national celebrations. So in 1 year we can do it in the big population centers, in Castries, in Vieux-Fort, so where the public is in the numbers and can show the appreciation. Now once we had done it for La Rose, La Marguerite said, you have to do it for us too. So we end up having to also do it for La Marguerite. But La Marguerite was very special last year. We actually had a coronation. And I had never seen a coronation of a La Marguerite Queen before. And we actually had a coronation at the Grosley Church. and then they went on to their horse-drawn carriage to have a La Marguerite dinner. And I'll tell you what was even special about the dinner for me. That some of the hotels actually bought tables so the guests can come and see what a La Marguerite dinner was like. And Chef Orlando was the one who did the menu, prepared the food and served in the Grosile Human Resource Center. I had never seen La Marguerite in such, splendor, Mr. Speaker. And I know, I must tell you, say Vive La Marguerite, I almost said that in church during the La Rose Festival. But I can tell you, and the member from January North, he really started because he had the most groups, certainly in La Rose. And also, there's a particular young man who beat that drum so well during the festival. It really made us proud to see him, performing. We had never seen such effort being put into the La Rose and the La Marguerite. And of course, Creole Heritage Month, what it means to us as St. Lucians. I don't think last year we got it right in all aspects. One community withdrew at a very late stage. I wouldn't say that it is Monrepo, but they did not stay, and there were some issues, Mr. Speaker, and we will try to do it better this year. We don't always get everything right, but the member for Miku North has told me he definitely wants Monrepo this year to be involved, and we will sit. One of the things I'm very glad about, Mr. Speaker, is how we've worked with all the stakeholders. For Emancipation Day, the relationship we've had with the Rastafarian community, the way we've met with the different groups, the way FRC supports and is deeply involved, the La Rose groups, the La Marguerite groups, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we'll be adding a new activity, Mr. Speaker. From now on, the Prime Minister has said we must celebrate Labor Day differently, Mr. Speaker. May 1st is Workers' Day, and we must celebrate the workers of the country. We have to celebrate the workers of the country. Now, the Prime Minister, I've already said to him, this year we will, because of how the budget is done, we're having estimates now, policy statement end of April. Monies are not really available until the middle of May. So we will have a challenge how much we can do for May 1st this year. But I can guarantee you, together with the Department of Labor, that will provide a lot of leadership on this, we are going to have, from next year, the biggest celebration for May Day in the history of St. Lucia. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to look at grants and contributions, Mr. Speaker, where we have a total of $15.7 million for that purpose, Mr. Speaker. And one of the important allocations for me is for the development of the creative industries. We usually used to get $500,000 a year. It was increased to $750,000. And for me, it's really important to have such monies available, and I'll tell you why quickly, Mr. Speaker. First of all, the small grants program, where we can make monies available to different groups, different organizations, artists that just need some support to put on a creative or cultural event, whether it's for pageantry, publishing a book, theatrical production, dressmaking. They can apply to the ministry, and I'm appealing to those creatives that need small grants, that this government has made more money available to you, for you to get support, for you to put on your creative expressions. So if you need the support, apply to the ministry and we will assist you. Throughout the communities of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, we want them to be able to express themselves, and we will be providing the support for this. The National Performance Program, Mr. Speaker, again, will be making monies available to ensure community tourism gets the support. Kabawe Crawl, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you, the Kabawe Crawl is one of the most innovative and creative ideas that we've added to the tourism product, Mr. Speaker. So just imagine, that's where people meet. They play dominoes. They argue politics, football, cricket is in the Kabawes. That is a distinct Caribbean, experience. Other countries have it too. In England, they call it the pubs. They don't say rum shops. They say the pub. You go to your pub. Before any football match, you go to your pub so you can ready for your football match or rugby match. We have it as the cabaret, the rum shops. But that's quintessentially West Indian and St. Lucia. So we now add into it
Member for Castries South, you have 10 minutes left.
10. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to invoke Standing Order 4210 to allow the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister an additional 30 minutes within which to complete his presentation.
Honorable members, the question is that Standing Order 3210 be invoked to allow the Leader of Government Business and Member for Castries South an additional 30 minutes in which to complete his presentation. I now put the question: as many as of their opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted.
Okay, so Mr. Speaker, I'll try to move quickly because I need to say something about the secrets of Castries South. So I want to have some time for that. Mr. Speaker, another program we have which I'm really excited about is what we call Arts in Public Spaces. And I know Miku North will be benefited from that. I think you would have received your grant already. Mr. Speaker, we have to promote art in public spaces. And the young people that are involved in visual arts, whatnot, this is an opportunity for them to find spaces in their community. Viewfort, the murals on the walls at the field in Viewfort, some other places. And I want you to encourage the young people in your constituencies to apply for the assistance where you could get the support to paint ourselves on spaces, our lives, our stories on spaces. And we will be making the monies available in Babono, Viewfort North, Denry North. And I'm really excited about we doing so throughout the country, Mr. Speaker. And we have monies for this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to move quickly, so I'll skip some of the other exciting programs. Mr. Speaker, Carnival, Mr. Speaker. Remember last year when we said we were going to have Vax Mass? People said we were irresponsible, hundreds would die, that we should not do it, Mr. Speaker. But we fought, Mr. Speaker, and I discussed it with my colleagues, with the Prime Minister and colleagues in Cabinet, that the creative sector had suffered the most from COVID, the most. Why? Because creative people need to express themselves. They need crowds, they need audience. COVID restricted and denied an audience for them. So everybody was bottled up within their confined spaces. Creativity cannot flourish in such circumstances. It has to be unlocked. It must be given space, Mr. Speaker. And we wanted Carnival to be able for people to express themselves, the costume designers, the songwriters. We had to do it, Mr. Speaker. And we thought of how could we do it? We thought of Vax Mass. And then, of course, the Omicron virus came, which made it a little more, accepting for people to gather and to be together. And eventually, Mr. Speaker, we did have Carnival in its traditional way. And even when we said we were going to move from Vax Mass to traditional Carnival, we were decried again. But we had a vision and a clear understanding of what we wanted to do. I remember the Minister of Health really working with us. You know, Mr. Speaker, I tormented him, Mr. Speaker, to get his ministry to make the adjustments to be able to accommodate us. And he balanced those two demands masterfully between I annoying him every morning and his technical people advising him how it should be done. I don't know how he survived that period, Mr. Speaker, but he will tell you, I used to be at him regularly, so it was a real difficult period for him, Mr. Speaker. But guess what happened? We had one of the best carnivals we ever had, Mr. Speaker, and we had 10,000 visitors that came in for Carnival, making July 2022 our highest arrival month for the year, Mr. Speaker, and because of Carnival. Sorry? Well, the CFO was in Carnival order. But Mr. Speaker, so the government this year has given an extra $1 million for Carnival. It's not enough. We still need more. Why we need more, Mr. Speaker? And I'm saying it loud and clear. So many of my colleague parliamentarians from Strozel all the way are talking about community carnivals. Now, if community carnivals have to be financed and supported, $1 million is not enough. Last year we did not have Junior Panorama, Junior Carnival. There were so many other components we did not have. And 1 million, Mr. Speaker, is not enough, but it is what we have because the pie must be cut fairly and we'll have to make it work. But I'm saying to my colleagues to be a little gentle on me that you won't get everything you need for your community carnivals, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I need to move on, so I'm going to jump to some of the capital project, Mr. Speaker. So I won't have a chance to speak about most of the other stuff, Mr. Speaker. The ministry this year, Mr. Speaker, will be working really hard on certification and training. And I need you to understand why that's needed. If we're going to have a tourism industry that is world-class, a tourism industry that have the highest standards, we have to train. We have to spend the money on certification. We train you and then we certify you where you can say that's the levels I have reached. So you demonstrate it and you proudly show that you've been certified. And we have, Mr. Speaker, we made a case to the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, that $20,000 for training was just not enough. Not when we want to build a world-class tourism product. Not when we want to ensure that our people can deliver the highest standards. And he agreed, Mr. Speaker, and he's now increased that from $20,000 to $450,000 for us to spend, Mr. Speaker, on training. So I'm really proud of this. The Tourism Hostess Program, started by the Prime Minister when he was Minister of Tourism and the member for Beaufort South, Mr. Speaker, was Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and they better than me can explain to you why such a program is important. And I will tell you, for those of you who may have forgotten, the entry of the member of Miku South and leader of the opposition into politics was distinguished, well, into government, by the firing of the tourism hostesses. Remember that in Soufre? Yes. Yeah. Remember that? By firing them. Because from that day, he did not believe that a tourism hostess program is important. But it is important. By training people in the communities who are willing to welcome visitors to their community, to speak about the history of their community, the stories of their community, the struggles of their community, the aspirations of the community, the beauty of their community. That is valuable, Mr. Speaker. The visitors feel more welcome, they feel more connected, and the community feels it is part of the tourism experience, Mr. Speaker. How could you not support a community tourism program? So, Mr. Speaker, it will be brought back. Already we've done some training with the Taiwanese into storytelling techniques, because they do it in Taiwan, and they were down here and decided to teach our people, our trainers about storytelling. How do you create stories about your community to be able to, Mr. Speaker? So allocation is made for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under capital expenditure, Mr. Speaker, would you let me know when I have about 15 minutes left so I can speak about cash? I have time? Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, no, it will start in a bit, Mr. Speaker, not just yet. Mr. Speaker, let's look at National Tourism Awards on page 590. Did you hear the member from Miku South last night? Did you hear him? No, I mean, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, he would stand up and ask, why would this government want to spend $150,000 on the tourism awards, and whether or not we could not go and get that money from the private sector instead? $150,000? Let me first of all say to this honorable house that the tourism awards is being hosted in collaboration with two other agencies. The private sector, St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Association, they're contributing $150,000. The Tourism Authority, as the chief marketing agency, is contributing, and the ministry is contributing. So it is a joint collaboration. But it is important for us to have tourism awards. And Mr. Speaker, the tourism awards have been named the Jimmys. Now, do you know why the Jimmys? Mount Jimmy is the highest point in St. Lucia. It's the highest you can reach in St. Lucia. And by giving our tourism workers those who have not been boasted of, those who have not been recognized, that we're giving you a Jimmy, the highest point of achievement in St. Lucia, is a powerful statement to them of our appreciation to them for the successes that this country has had, especially the tourism industry. That we specifically name it the Jimmys. So we name it the Jimmys to say it's not only about the hoteliers being recognized and supported, they will be part of it too. But it's also about saying to St. Lucians that we appreciate what you're doing for the success of this country. How dare you criticize this and think that is a waste of money for us to do such a thing, Mr. Speaker? It reflects the thinking. It's the non-entity thinking, Mr. Speaker. It's the non-entity thinking that is not important for average, ordinary people to rise to the top. It's not important for you to say to people who in their own way contribute. But if you're not of a certain standing, Mr. Speaker, you're not deserving of being recognized. So, Mr. Speaker, the Jimmys will be held on April 26th. And do you know what the theme is? Rethinking tourism. Because we have to rethink it. We have to put our people at the center of it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on page 590, you will see an allocation of $750 for the National Cultural Center refurbishment. The National Cultural Center needs serious refurbishment. And I really hope, Mr. Speaker, and I'm saying it to the member from Catherine East, can hear me, that we need to have a proper cultural center in St. Lucia. We need to have one. And a member from Beaufort South will tell you, many years ago, when we were doing the development projects with the Chinese, one of them was going to be a cultural center. And I know he had already identified and chosen land. I'm not sure if it had been acquired. He can let us know. In Shock for the National Cultural Center. So we've had a long desire in the Labour Party to have a proper cultural center in St. Lucia. And we must not let that dream fade away, Honorable Prime Minister. We will have to have a proper building that can host our archives, host our museum, and become a performance area for our creatives in this country. We have to do so. So whilst we are repairing the cultural center, that dream must not die, Mr. Speaker. Community tourism, Mr. Speaker, on page 363. I spoke about the community tourism earlier on when I explained that this government cares. That is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, we are doing community tourism. And under, Mr. Speaker, when I will deal with the policy, I will speak some more about the community tourism. But let me just say quickly, Mr. Speaker, that under the last government, they call it village tourism. And just give me 2 minutes on my 30 minutes, Mr. Speaker. Let me just say something about this. Because the last government did not pass the legislation, did not put the institution in place, but they used all the money for the tourism program. They use all. They did not pass the legislation. They did not set up the institution to do it, but the monies were spent. Some of them, I must tell you, in projects that I think were good. Monies were invested in ancillary canneries, the bed and breakfast, the restaurant. In the Ministry of Tourism area. But some went into putting lights in the Jackmel playing field. I heard some was given to Grozili. I can't even tell you what it was used for. And I mean, it really missed the boat. This is an excellent idea. It is something that started when the Prime Minister was Minister of Tourism. The member from Beaufort South will tell you of the vision of taking tourism to the people. We started heritage tourism. It continued and it continued. Exactly, it continued. Felix Finisterre, Mr. Speaker. And there we had the right meeting of idea, resources, and a lot of those resources, I believe, was not properly utilized. I support what is going on in ancillary canneries. I've spoken to the parliamentary rep about it, and we're going to work to make it come to completion. Again, because of the way it was done, there are issues. There's no money for sewer because we really cannot throw untreated sewer into the bay from the bed and breakfast and the restaurant. So we're going to find the money to complete the project. We're going to do more work in canneries. And the member from Answer Canneries will tell you an entire market and restaurant will be done in canneries. In Grosile, the beach park in Grosile will be done. I cannot give you figures because those have gone out for tender. And so it would make sense for me to tell you what's allocated for it for obvious reasons. So we're going to continue that. But the good news is the Prime Minister, in discussion with him, said we need more money for more community projects. So he's spoken to the CARICOM Development Fund, and we're going to get another $3 million. And already we've started identifying some of the possible projects. So the Mon lay-by will be replaced. As you know, it's a real, not an eyesore, but also health hazard because it is moving. So we have to rebuild it. We're going to build some performance center areas in Vieux-Fort North, in Serenity Park. Even in Marcia, we're going to redo the Marcia market and to do something in there for community tourism. I know Leclerc has an interest. There's a very exciting project that the church has submitted to us to put a shrine to commemorate the 3 persons who had been killed there and to create some religious tourism for cruise passengers when they come in. Miku North will be getting a CMOS experience. Denry South, the fish fry had been allowed to just fade away in the last 5 years. It's going to be restored. So there are a number of projects we're looking at. We now need to engage in the southern part of the island in terms of what it is that they want to present for our consideration. So we are constantly looking for more resources for us to be able to spread the community tourism idea all over the island, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, the amphitheaters there'll be 2 in Vieux-Fort North and 1. Now, under the OECS competitive tourism project, the RTCP, we have a number of activities, and I think $13.7 million is being provided, Mr. Speaker, for that. We will complete the project in Strozel. It was mentioned by the representative for Strozel, the craft market redevelopment. That will happen, Honorable Member. It has gone out for tender, so no figures will be put in there, as you can imagine. The Castries market redevelopment will take place. We're building a container box park where the old marketing board building used to be. That will add to the cruise tourism experience where people can go in and have various offerings made to them, Mr. Speaker. In Soufrière, we're completing the Old Trafford project, so there'll be more concessionary booths built in Strozel for the Old Trafford project. I think it's costing $667,000 to complete that project. I think I mixed up Canaries is actually under the ORTCP and not the community tourism. So it's going to be there. And of course, Mr. Speaker, we're going to be doing some work in Marigot, in Castries South, Mr. Speaker. The Marigot Bay waterfront redevelopment. I think all members in here will agree that Marigot is the most wonderful site for the setting sun, and maybe after the Pitos is the most beautiful part of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And Marigot Bay waterfront really needs some redevelopment. So we will be doing a redevelopment of Marigot Bay. And in the next 2 to 3 years, when you go to Marigot Bay, it will be a totally different experience. The beach on the other side, La Basse, an investor has already agreed to put one of the best beach bars in the Caribbean on that, reclaim the beach, restore it to its original size, and put a beach bar there for us. They're also in the process of acquiring lands to build a resort on the hillside, so we will have an entirely different Marigot. The Marigot Bay project is going out to tender. We've done all the drawings, and we're getting ready to go out to tender for Marigot Bay, so that will be an exciting development. When you pass the gas station on Millennium Highway, heading south on your right, there's a sharp corner called Asfair, a piece of mountain there. We'll be redeveloping that to create a lookout point. And I must tell you, based on the drawings, I'm really inspired to see this project come to fruition, because it will be a sight to behold when we transform that area, Mr. Speaker, and offer greater opportunities to the people of Castries South, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is an issue in St. Lucia, all the honorable members. Mr. Speaker, can you give me some protection, please? So, Mr. Speaker, we have an interesting problem in St. Lucia. But it's a problem that when we solve it, will create tremendous possibilities. In the increase in the cruise arrivals again, there's a huge demand by cruise travelers who want beach experiences for the day. So right now is overcrowding taking place at Ridgely Beach and at VG. And they're even going to Soufrière now, and Chasney, whatnot, Pigeon Point, whatnot. So we need more beach parks. But when you create a beach park, here what you're doing, the beach boys rent a chair for 20 US a day, sometimes more. The guys who sell the Heineken, the Piton, the guys that sell the barbecue chicken, the roving vendors that sell stuff, make money. So we need to create more beach parks in St. Lucia. We don't have to crowd VG, Ridgely, Pigeon Point, but create more along the coast. So we've started identifying spots. Now, that's not new to us. That started from the last government. But the way they approach it was not structured in a more holistic way. They tried to do something in ancillary alone and not really look at all the possibilities. So we need to look at all the possibilities. And so we've started doing that, to look at all the different possibilities. One possibility that came readily to us, and that's why I'm disappointed with the last Minister of Tourism, because he skipped it and then he went to Ansari. Buckeye has a beach park. Buckeye. And for us, it's a natural, it's a low-hanging fruit. Let us upgrade it and can accommodate hundreds of cruise passengers there. I'll be speaking to Soufrière. It is a Barons Drive and Magnitude in that area, how we can create something for the guys from Barons Drive and then to really run a beach park down in that area. So one of the provisions this year under the ORTCP is a Buckeye Beach Park. We've done some drawings for it, how we can upgrade it, and once we can resolve with Buckeye, we will be able to execute that project. The member from Strozel yesterday asked about training of the vendors that was part of the project. So that is provided for in this year's estimates again, for us to start the training of vendors. And that, like I said earlier, training is really important for us, so we definitely will do so. Mr. Speaker, you know, there's just so much going on in tourism, Mr. Speaker. So much going on. Real exciting stuff, Mr. Speaker. And when we speak and in a policy session, the Prime Minister will make an announcement, because the opposition has said a lot about GPH, and we sell the port, and we agree that there will not be any cruise port in Vieux-Fort, and we move cruise from Castries to Vieux-Fort. A lot of talk. Forgetting that the discussions started with him. With him. And, you know, in this business, as much as you want to criticize, sometimes you have the responsibility of government on your shoulder, so you are limited by what you can say. And I want to respect our private sector investors and not see some of what had gone on before. But St. Lucia should have had that project already. Should have had it already. But again, it's how the last government did their business. So we've come in and we've tried to correct some of the issues and to put it back on course. But hopefully, if all goes well, and Cabinet agrees with the proposal, because the negotiating team is still finalizing it, it will make a dramatic transformation of Soufrière waterfront, the Bannans Bay area and the entire waterfront by the government buildings, because it's a really exciting project, and hopefully by the policy statement time in the end of April, we would be in a position to release all the details of it. But I can say to you, Mr. Speaker, that when we do make those announcements and execute this project, it would really, really add. And I'm already envisaging, if you have the Bannans Fisherman's Village, you have the boardwalk on the waterfront, you have Ans Fair, you have Buckeye, you have Ancillary, you have Canneries, you have Soufre waterfront. The whole coast starts to change, and you have the Grosile Beach Park. These are possibilities as well. There's a lot. Sandy Beach, well, that one is an issue that we need to have a discussion with, because I think Invest did a development plan for that area, and there's some very good ideas in it, and we need to move forward. We are also still working very hard to get a cruise development in the south for home porting. That had been spoken about for a long time, and I teased the member from Vieux-Fort South once. I remember when we actually boarded a cruise ship in Vieux-Fort, because he too was from then trying to get cruise ships to come to Vieux-Fort, and I still remember that day, many years ago. And so it is something, because we recognize most of the attractions are in the south, are really in the south, in Srozelle, in Soufre, Vieux-Fort, whatnot. So there's a lot that can happen, and we can really transform, the entire tourism industry. Now, Mr. Speaker, for the next few minutes, I want to say a bit about Castries South, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, you would have heard members. No, I asked that. Mr. Speaker, you would have heard members said that they've been advised to Chensigweyo to hold your secrets and don't say too much. So I'll be a little constrained by how much I can say about Castries South, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, I must express my sincere thanks in starting to the Prime Minister and to the member for Castries North, Mr. Speaker. I stood in this house as a member of the opposition, and I called on the member from Castries North to please repair the Basse Joseph Road and the Marigot Road. Marigot attracts significant numbers of cruise tourists and overnight tourists, and the road could not continue to be in the state in which it was in. I spoke to him about the Basse Joseph Road. Ever since that road was built, Mr. Speaker, almost 40 years ago, it had never been fixed, Mr. Speaker. Never. And I spoke to him about it in opposition, and he promised me that he was going to do something about it. He came into this honorable house in a budget debate, and he actually announced that they were going to repair the road in the financial year, and it never happened. I had to, Mr. Speaker, on 2 occasions, it was redirected, 2 occasions, to see a board being put up saying that the road reconstruction will start, and it been taken down. 2 occasions. I saw that, Mr. Speaker, because...
Member, you have 10 minutes left.
Mr. Speaker, okay, that's fine. I'll try to finish in 10. So, Mr. Speaker, I know how he tried to make, the honorable member tried to get the roads fixed, Mr. Speaker. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that both the Marigot and Basse Joseph roads have been fixed, Mr. Speaker, and totally reconstructed. And I must say to you, honorable member, the people love you. And the last time you came there, I saw you felt the love of the community of Basse Joseph. They wanted to keep you, but I had to stop it, Mr. Speaker. But those roads, Mr. Speaker, and I started off by saying that Castries South is a special constituency. It was George Charles' constituency. And, I would comment. I know you from Monlatok. That's where I knew you. I didn't know you were Basse Joseph. But the point is, it's really appreciated. It's really appreciated, Mr. Speaker. And we've gotten both the Marigot and Basse Joseph roads fixed, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask you, honorable member, to deal with some of the other roads, but I'm being reasonable. I know other colleagues also want their roads fixed. I got the two major roads in my constituency fixed. So I'm not going to pressure you, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Member, but we do have other roads that need repair. I still get criticism that the Marigo Road was not completed all the way up to the bay, but at least if we can get some potholing, a little tidying up of it. Up to 2 days ago, I got a text complaining about it. And there's some roads in Sisera, minor roads, just, do some little works on it. I will inform the next round when I will get my major allocations for roads, but I'm very happy and satisfied. Mr. Speaker, Sisera playing field. I came into this house. The previous rep, Robert Lewis, under the Labour Party, got approval to upgrade the Sisera playing field. It was stopped. I spoke to the then Minister of Sport from Denry South about just repairing, because it had been approved by NLA, to just restore it. I said, look, I'm going to get the lights. I'm going to get the poles. Mr. Speaker, I was not allowed to do it, and they would not have just restored the surface. The member from Grozile told me he would take care of it. And Mr. Speaker, it is being done now. And then, it is being done now, Mr. Speaker. And in the next 2 months or so, it would have been totally surfaced and the grass grown, Mr. Speaker. And he has promised that we will also get the lights put in, Mr. Speaker. I'm also going to add to it, Mr. Speaker, an outdoor gym. I already have acquired the gym through the Diabetes and Hypertensive Society and the Church of Latter-day Saints. They've provided the outdoor gym, so we'll have a complete outdoor gym in the corner of the field. We will get the lights, and hopefully some stands will be built in. Think about it, Mr. Speaker. Castries South does not have a playing field, a standard-sized playing field. We have the Marigo playing field, but it is mostly used by Jackmel, Roseau, and what's the other side? Castries South is, some of those other areas. Yeah, Mr. Speaker. So Sisera, which is one of the largest communities in St. Lucia, Sisera cannot have a standard-sized playing field. But thanks to the member from Grozile, we will finally have a playing field, Mr. Speaker, that we can boast about, Mr. Speaker. So I'm really, really proud and happy for that. The Bassa Joseph Community Center, Mr. Speaker, the Bassa Joseph Community Center was started under the last Labour Party government, half-built, elections in 2016. It was stopped, and nothing has happened since then. A contract was signed last month, a few days ago, but we're still in March, a few days ago, for the work to continue on the Bassa Joseph Community Center, and for Bassa Joseph now to have a community center. Mr. Speaker, Castries South does not have any community centers except what we have in Fuashu. Think about that. The entire constituency. The only community center we have is what we have upstairs, the public facility in Fuashu, which itself can barely fit 30 people. That cannot be right. That cannot be right. And Mr. Speaker, I've told the Prime Minister, I will work the extra day. I will take the extra flight. I will do whatever I can to help raise the resources so Castries South can get a full complement of social facilities, Mr. Speaker. We will, during this year, continue on the Goodlands Road under the BNTF. It had been started again under the last Labour Party government, and it was stopped. So it's coming back again, and it will be continuing the road down by Madeleine, down to the bottom, all the way to the top of the former George Charles Secondary School, Mr. Speaker. From the top of the hill where where you put the barriers, the crash barriers, whatnot. Then, Mr. Speaker, we'll be doing some work at the Lacroix Combined School, putting in a classroom under the BNTF project, Mr. Speaker, and making sure that we provide the children with all that they need, Mr. Speaker. We've done a lot, Mr. Speaker, socially in the constituency, a lot. The Back to School, Mr. Speaker, our Top Achievers program to honor the top performers in the common entrance, Mr. Speaker. The Christmas program is a special thing for us in Castle South, where we give out our hampers to the elderly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we also have some creative programs. We have our black cake and sorrel competition, where we have a competition to see who can bake the best black cake and make the best sorrel, Mr. Speaker. And it is for us an exciting time when we bring the community together, Mr. Speaker, to celebrate, Mr. Speaker, the community spirit and everything else, Mr. Speaker. I spoke earlier about the school fees and the laptops. Castle South really benefits from that. You know, our constituency is one where there are few challenged communities, and those programs, the medical bills, the funeral support, the food vouchers, the laptops, the school fees, Mr. Speaker, these make a difference. I know we're all concerned. We don't want people to become too dependent on government. But whilst we're providing training, we're creating opportunities, Mr. Speaker. We also want, Mr. Speaker, we also want, Mr. Speaker, to be able to give them the support so people can enjoy some civilized living until they get the job, until they are able to acquire all the skills. They need to have some civilized living. Because if people cannot have any civilized living, they become social, outcasts and deviants, Mr. Speaker. So it's not about, creating dependency syndrome. We must avoid it. But we must also recognize people are human beings and they must be treated as such, Mr. Speaker. And the support for the schools, I've always held myself out to support, Mr. Speaker, the schools. I know right now in Soufrière we have Island Chumps going on, Mr. Speaker. And, the minister have left, Mr. Speaker. He stepped out. But to really say to him is a fantastic initiative that he is doing, Mr. Speaker. And I too hope that my schools can also benefit from that. But, Mr. Speaker, in the minutes I have left, and until the Prime Minister comes, Mr. Speaker, you have to let me speak until he comes back in. What's the future? What's going to happen in Castle South, Mr. Speaker? I've said of all the things we're going to do, but, Mr. Speaker, think about it. Cicero Community Center has been closed for almost 7 years. It's small. It cannot serve a community of that size. The bottom is used as a daycare or preschool. The top is wooden, termite infested, and you have children downstairs. It is so badly, it has degenerated so badly, it's closed for years. You cannot not have a community center in Cicero. You cannot not have one. That just cannot continue. And I've said to the Prime Minister, I will start the process of identifying a site, and I've done so, and to start the drawings and costings for us to have a proper community center in Cicero, Mr. Speaker. The community deserves it. The community deserves it. We cannot have the community with no community center. So Basel Joseph will have one, Cicero will have one, and we'll have to fix Fuasho. In Marigo, under the last Labour Party government, again, under the CDB, we built a preschool, a learning center, and the upstairs, which is supposed to be a community center, has never been completed. Can you imagine how Castle South was treated? But that's going to stop. That's not going to continue. So we're going to do something about Marigo as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Fuasho is a very special place to me, Mr. Speaker. And I remember growing up, Mr. Speaker, there was never any sporting facilities in the community. Never. Think about it. Never have a feeling for a show, a court. Under the last government, again under Dr. Anthony, we identify a piece of land. The AG is not there, but the piece of land is right next to his home. Well, this is where he used to live. He still visits there every day, though. We acquired that land to put a court for Fuasho when Robert Lewis was a parliamentary rep. Well, Mr. Speaker, I've gotten the drawings for the court and the costing, and we will start the Fuasho court this year, Mr. Speaker. We will start it, Mr.
Member,
Speaker.
you have to wrap
Sorry?
up. You have to wrap up.
You want me to wrap up? Mr. Speaker, I have a lot more to say about the things we will be doing in Kasri South, but I understand that we need to change Sigwe and we need to recognize, Mr. Speaker, that my time is up. But I can say to the people of Kasri South, we promise we will transform Kasri South. We promise that. A lot of work had started under Robert Lewis that was not completed. It will be completed, and we will transform Kasri South. Yeah, and then we will be, Kasri South proud of the representation that it has gotten, Mr. Speaker. Let me end, Mr. Speaker, by once again expressing my support to the Prime Minister for all the assistance he's given me as Minister and as Parliamentary Rep. Let me say thank you to all my colleagues in Cabinet. It's a real joy, Mr. Speaker, to work with this Cabinet of Ministers. I can tell you, it's a joy. There are those who have had a lot more experience and you can go to them and share ideas and get guidance from them. There are new ones than me who we talk a lot about where we're going, what we're doing, and it's a real camaraderie that we have, Mr. Speaker. And I enjoy, one of my best days are Mondays to go to Cabinet and to sit with my colleagues, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you, it's a real delightful experience to go to Cabinet on Mondays and for us to work together, Mr. Speaker. So I want to express my thanks to my colleagues and to the Prime Minister. I believe the budget the estimates which was presented is what we need for these times. It really seeks to achieve multiple objectives. And I think the Minister of Finance, the member for Castries East, has gotten it right in terms of what he's planning to do. I just want, Mr. Speaker, to make one appeal, and I'm sure other members share it with me. Mr. Speaker, the medical care in this country, healthcare in this country, has to be placed at the top priority. Every day, Mr. Speaker, persons who need cancer patients, MRI, just over and over, Mr. Speaker. It is overbearing, it's overwhelming, and we need to, Mr. Speaker. And it's one reason why I support what was presented wholeheartedly. When the Prime Minister said this budget is about healthcare and security, I was one of the happiest persons because I know what we go through as parliamentary representatives, Mr. Speaker. So I look forward to its implementation. I will play my part wholeheartedly and with determination to make sure we achieve our objectives for the year. Thank you very much.
I recognize the member for Babonneau, but before she rises, let me state the authority for the member rising a second time, lest I be accused of being partisan. Understanding Order 32, subsection 5. It says, in the debate arising out of the motion for the adoption of the report of the Standing Finance Committee, which is what we're doing, to which the estimates of expenditure for the forthcoming year has been referred for examination and report, any minister may, before the conclusion of the debate, speak again, once only, in reply to any points arising in the debate on any department or subject with the responsibility for which he or she is charged. Having said that, member, let me caution you that if you raise any new material, I would ask you to take your seat. You can only respond to something that was said about your department which you wish to respond to. So you may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise in response to some questions that were posed yesterday. And these questions were in keeping with the department under my watch. Mr. Speaker, the door was open and I have no choice but to walk in. And the leader of the opposition yesterday when he made reference to the estimates of revenue and expenditure 2023-2024, cited page 82, head 22, which is under the Public Service and Gender Affairs. And he made reference to the section which speaks to fully implement the Digital Government Services Platform, DigiGov, by December 2022. Fully implement the Shared Services Platform by December 2022. And procure ICT equipment for schools and containerize mobile data for Center Caribbean digital transformation projects by September 2022. Mr. Speaker, you will be fully aware that the member opposite was claiming that nothing was done in this area. There was no report. And Mr. Speaker, I need to put it on record that when the Honorable Prime Minister assigned me the responsibility for the public service, Home Affairs, Labor and Gender Affairs, and when I walked into the Department of Public Service, I asked the members of the department who was their previous minister, and they told me the previous minister was the Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, the office in that ministry was occupied by Minister of Equity, yet it is in the public service. Mr. Speaker, it is an indication that the minister's responsibility for the public service was disconnected with what was happening in that department. And that is the challenge that I have on my hand, Mr. Speaker. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the DigiGov project will cost this government $12.6 million US. And it cannot be a project that nothing happened on it. Mr. Speaker, in the budget, the estimates, the Honorable Prime Minister has allocated $4.4 million for implementation. And when we speak of what has happened, where is the report? This government came in 2021, December 2022, September 2022. We have a full report, and this estimate could not have captured that report. But a lot of work has been done in that area, Mr. Speaker. The Division of Public Sector Modernization budget notes for 2023. The DigiGov component of that ministry is that component, and the other components we spoke about will be what will transform government's operation, not just in the public service, but in all government's departments. And this is a huge investment on the part of this government. Mr. Speaker, when we speak of procurement of equipment for schools, last year, the Department of the Public Service handed over to the Ministry of Education 2,200 laptops to distribute to students. That's from this program. We distributed 2,200 tablets that was given to the Ministry of Education that came from this project, Mr. Speaker. And the Prime Minister has allocated $3 million for operating the project expenses. And you will notice that there is a reduction with the GINET program and the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project, because these projects are actually wrapping up in the upcoming financial year. Mr. Speaker, the ICT Evolution Project, an amount of $6 million is provided to honor the contractual payment to Crimson Logics for implementation phase of the project. A lot of money is allocated, and if the member on the other side had read the estimates, and do not come here and call dictation, page whatever, asking a question, page whatever. When I was in school, that's what we do, the students. You give a call dictation for them, and they take notes. And yesterday we had a dictation lesson from the leader of the opposition. It means he did not study the document. He did not look at what the estimates of revenue and expenditure dealt with. And you think you will come here and ask questions and say we did nothing when government has invested millions of dollars to transform the public service, government's operation, and to make things better, and to bring St. Lucia to the level of regional and international standards? Mr. Speaker, if we sit here and we do not go anywhere, people outside there will believe it was the last administration that's still managing the country. We have to go out there and let people see the new faces, the new ideas, and the new thinking of this government. And when we go out there, you heard the reports when our ministers give statement at cabinet, and when they represent, Mr. Speaker, you could see there is a breath of fresh air. And people at the regional and international level asking, where were we? Because what they saw before is nothing compared to what they are seeing now. They are seeing a change, a transformation in terms of representation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the point was raised on Orange Grove Plaza. I hope the leader of the opposition understood what he said, because that falls under facilities management in my ministry. I hope he understood what he said, and the Prime Minister will deal with him accordingly. I will leave that for the Prime Minister to handle. I'm not going there. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition made reference on page 84. He asked question on what's happening on page 84. Head 22, that again is under the Department of the Public Service and Gender Affairs. Mr. Speaker, there were a few areas in that section, and the leader of the opposition was asking answers to these. To develop standard operating procedures for the development of public service by March 31st, 2022 to ensure consistency in the delivery service. To develop an orientation manual for the Department of the Public Service by December 21st, 2021, that's just about a few months after we got into office, to include new entrants to inculcate new entrants to the shared commitments of the department, to develop a framework for teleworking by March 31st, 2022, to determine the requirements for teleworking in St. Lucia Public Service. Note, Public Service Management Bill. Mr. Speaker, there is a Public Service Management Bill that was prepared by 2013. This year it will be 10 years that bill has been out there. The last administration did nothing. They sat on it for the last 5 years, and they were even trying to get an additional year before the election was called, so it would have been 6 years. What was done about this bill? This is the bill that we need. We need to look at the laws, we need to look at the regulations that will govern the public service. And the last time this bill was revised is almost 30 years, Mr. Speaker. We have the staff orders, and that is why a lot of things have been outdated, Mr. Speaker, and we need to bring it in line. That bill was sent to the AG chambers. They did the legal drafting, reconfigure it, and now it is back into the public service. And right now, as I speak here today, Mr. Speaker, the heads of department at the public service, they are gathered at the training center in Union, and that is the third session going through that bill word by word, so that it reflects. They are comparing what, because that thing that was developed 10 years ago, some of it is already outdated, and therefore we need to review it. So they are comparing that with what is in the standing orders, in the staff orders, so that we can bring it in line. Copies of that bill, Mr. Speaker, has been distributed to all cabinet colleagues so that they can have a look at it, and we'll find some time to study it again to ensure that what is in that bill, and we also have the regulations that go with the bill. These are the regulations we need so that we can look at reforming and modernizing the public service. And the public out there have been complaining over and over, and we know this government has made a commitment, and the Prime Minister will speak to that, because it comes with a lot of policy, it comes with finances, for us to revisit the public service and make it an efficient and effective instrument to serve the St. Lucian people. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about modernizing the public service. Yes, we are looking at technology, but technology is not all. We have to look at the issue of benchmark qualification. When the Public Service Commission has to appoint persons, the Teaching Service Commission has to appoint persons, when they look at what are the requirements for a particular position, these things are long outdated. They are talking about GCE, so long we have CXC. So we need to go back to the drawing board and bring these things up to speed so that we attract what is in keeping with our times. And Mr. Speaker, we have to look at how do we restructure the public service? How do we restructure government's operation, communication, implementation of government programs? All these things are on slow motion. How do we revisit the public service? How do we reform the public service so that we have legislation that is in keeping with the new trend, with the times? And when we complete this exercise, Mr. Speaker, we want St. Lucia to be an envy for the rest of the region, so that we have the most modernized public service. We have to reform. We have to bring it up to speed. And Mr. Speaker, you would have heard me in this house when the governor for the Central Bank presented a report to St. Lucia. And when we look at where we rank in a number of areas, St. Lucia had fallen flat. This research wasn't done by this government. It was done by an international regional agency. So it is very fair. It is objective. And therefore, we just have to pack up, buckle our shoes, and move up. And let us take St. Lucia to the level that St. Lucia used to be, and even higher. That is our objective. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition went further, and he spoke about border control agency. And he said how I spoke about border control agency and he didn't see anything in the budget. Mr. Speaker, had the gentleman read the estimates of revenue and expenditure, he would have seen what the Honorable Prime Minister has done and what he plans to do in that area. Under the Department of Home Affairs, the Border Control Management System that was launched about 8 months ago. And that management system gives you access to every point of entry, who enters the country and who leaves the country. We did not have that before. And at one point you can see everything that's happening. That is in motion. And the Prime Minister allocated in the budget $1,045,319 we have to spend annually. That is required for license payment to assist the Immigration Department in monitoring of persons who travel in and out of the country. That is in the budget. There is an allocation in the budget, Mr. Speaker, of $200,000 for relocation of passport and immigration office. Right now, we are actually retrofitting a new place to relocate immigration and passport. And the Prime Minister has put in the budget $200,000 to facilitate that. Mr. Speaker, in the budget, the Prime Minister made an allocation of 3 million. In fact, it will cost us $3,377,107 to provide procurement for 175,000 passports. The e-passport. So people cannot say they cannot get passports. They will not get passports. Government has already invested in purchasing 175,000 passports. So there are passports for children who are not even born yet, Mr. Speaker. All right? So when you hear all the rush and they are not getting passports and the lines are long and so on, but maybe it's a good thing, Mr. Speaker, because those who are coming for the passport, they are actually bringing a little revenue, so at least we can pay for the passports that we have ordered. This amount will be paid what we owe the Canadian banknote for printing the passport for us. We have to pay that over a period of 3 years. So whatever we collect from the passport, we have to pay for printing the passport. So government is not making a huge profit. When people spoke about cost of passport and it was like people thought it was a fortune. No, we are not printing passports. And this passport, because it is of a high sensitive nature, high security, it costs some money to put that together. And Mr. Speaker, on the Border Control Agency, we are finalizing the legislation before this new entity comes into being. It is now the document, the bill, the legislation is with the Attorney General. And it has implication for a border control agency because it will bring in the customs, it will bring in the marine unit, it will bring in immigration. All these entities must come together as one entity. It has implications for the bargaining agent. It has implication in terms of how they will operate, and government has to find the finance for us to get. But first thing we have to put in place is the legislation. We need the laws that will govern this entity, and we have to make sure that it does not cross line with other legislation. So these things take time, and we are working on it. It is with the Attorney General right now, and we are trying to finalize. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition spoke, and that touches on the Department of Labor. And he talked about increasing salaries. He noticed increasing salaries in a number of departments, including the Department of the Public Service and so on. But isn't it a fact that this government decided to give the public servants the 3% increase which the last government promised them, Mr. Speaker? And the Prime Minister honored that obligation and paid the public servants and even paid them the back pay because he could not have paid it at the time. The Prime Minister had to find the money. So therefore, what he expected to happen with the figures, he expected the figures to remain the same. That's where the increase is, Mr. Speaker. And when it comes to the back pay, it's a one-time payment. But when it comes to the salary increase, it's a permanent increase. The Prime Minister cannot change it again. So everybody's salary that went up by whatever $1 million, the Prime Minister has to get that every month to add to pay the new salaries. And Mr. Speaker, since this government has been in office, every public servant gets their pay on time. The Prime Minister, I cannot recall, he came to cabinet and said how he went to borrow some money to pay salaries. He's taking it from the taxpayers' money and he pays. And the Prime Minister has always said that if you hire somebody to work, you must find the money to pay. And he does not play by paying public servants. All we expect from public servants is to give a fair day's work for a fair day's pay. Don't say the salary is too small because you agreed to work at that salary. And this is what government can afford. And on that basis, I want the leader of the opposition to understand that he will see an increase in salary because this government is concerned about the welfare of the workers in this country. I think that's why it's called a labor government. Some people say a labor government, but it is for everybody. But when you have an emphasis on labor, you have to look at workers and workers' rights, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition also commented on the service commissions, and he said he saw an increase for service commissions. I want the leader of the opposition, I'm speaking to his seat because he's not there now, that government is getting ready for negotiations. We have to put in a negotiating team, and therefore we have to find an honorarium to pay them. So you would see an increase there. Government established a minimum wage commission. That wasn't there before. So we have to give them a little stipend, something for them to operate. So he will see the figures moving. And it is because this government is focused on doing the right thing, helping our people, making things better. Not today. They have been asking for a minimum wage in St. Lucia. I reported, Mr. Speaker, in this House that the Commission has met. We have not even paid them a stipend yet. But they have done, we have some very good experts, very technical people on the team, and they have come with an initial report, Mr. Speaker. And I did say in this House earlier this week that they are just getting ready to present their final report to the Prime Minister and to Cabinet Ministers. So you would have seen an increase in allocation for service commissions, Mr. Speaker, because things are happening. We are not stagnant. And Mr. Speaker, I move quickly to the leader of the opposition spoke about traveling. And he would have known a lot about that. Because I remember listening to the Calypso that spoke about the Amazona versicolor. And that's how they had described the leader of the opposition at the time that he was Prime Minister. He was like a bird in the air. So we cannot come here and talk about traveling and traveling and traveling. And I'm telling you, Mr. Speaker, as I have said before, that when our members travel, it is basically to improve on the image of St. Lucia. The few meetings that I have attended, Mr. Speaker, they ask, where were you? Because that's not what we used to hear before. And most of our colleagues travel when the agencies offer them an airfare and accommodation. And we only spend the money when it is absolutely necessary if we have in the kitty. Because we cannot stay home and say we're not going anywhere. We have to go. But I don't think any of us will occupy a hotel room that will cost over £2,000 a night. Because not under the watch of this Prime Minister. He has a calculator which has only minus, subtraction and division. Anytime we check the calculator, we do not see the addition, multiplication and equal sign. He took that out of his calculator. That's news for you? New information, right. So check the calculator. So he pays close attention to every figure. He either minus, that's too high. He divide and he say that's your allocation. And then equal. That's it. So you try and see how best you can manage. Mr. Speaker, I want to address briefly concerns raised by the member for Viewfort South. my learned colleague, former Prime Minister. And I want to respond by saying that before the outburst in Viewfort South, Mr. Speaker, I did visit Viewfort with the intention of bringing a number of government services to the South. And that was based on instructions from the Prime Minister. We had a delegation, and I was in communication with the parliamentary rep for Viewfort South. He should have accompanied me on the tour, but unfortunately the date that we set it, he was out of state, and he gave me permission to continue the mission. So we did visit Viewfort South, and we have been in contact with our different, the public service has been in contact with the different government ministries, so that we look at what are some of the agencies that can implement some activities in Viewfort South. So that discussion, I think we started off with the passport. That was the original idea, that we come in to provide passport services for the South. I did mention that we have ordered the equipment, and we also visited the location where we are going to operate, and DigiGov, Mr. Speaker, will also be setting up service center in Viewfort. But there are a number of other government ministries that are operating in Viewfort. They are operating in silos, and therefore we are going to bring that coordination and harmonization in the type of services we provide in the south of the island. But as the member for Viewfort South indicated, that this is an opportune time for us to bring about some transformation in Viewfort. And not Viewfort alone, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Barbono, I don't want to stop you, but you are proceeding to give another substantive speech. You can simply, the member for Viewfort South said he needed certain points, certain services. You can just point out that those services are to be, you have discussed them and they are coming, but you're giving another substantive presentation, which is not what the standing orders provide for.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I just felt that I needed to give him an update since we have not spoken since my visit.
No, you can do that. But
he's fully aware of that, Mr. Speaker. Okay, so we are in the process of responding to his concerns, and the dialogue will continue. So, Mr. Speaker, I want it to be known that the Department of the Public Service is responding, given the resources allocated, given the mandate from the Prime Minister to address a number of the concerns that are raised. And Mr. Speaker, I will not sit in this house and allow any member, especially the member of the opposition, to raise issues and give the impression that nothing had happened. There is so much, Mr. Speaker, that has happened that this estimates of revenue and expenditure will not have enough space to carry it. And Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that in the coming months we will find our channels, our opportunities to communicate to the St. Lucian public what this government has been doing in the areas that were raised by the leader of the opposition. So with this, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring clarity to the number of questions that were raised when the dictation lesson was given. I thank you.
Prime Minister and member for Castries East.
Speaker, in the practice of politics, there ought to be some level of truth, some level of trust, some level of confidence that you can place in the words that come from the mouth of a politician. More particularly, a politician who has had the privilege of being Prime Minister of a country. So when a Prime Minister, either a sitting Prime Minister or former Prime Minister, gets up and speaks, everyone listens because he would be speaking from experience, he would be speaking from knowledge, and he'd be speaking from an informed position, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the member from Viewfort South gets up to speak, there is great anticipation because everyone wants to hear what he's saying, his ideas, even his criticisms and his concerns. And this is appreciated by everyone, including me, Mr. Speaker, who's worked with him for many years. When a member from Castries North gets up to speak, again, we have sparred in different sides of the coin, of the table. We've had our sparred, we've criticized each other, and all of us have done that, but we did it with dignity. Sometimes we got rough. This is the nature of the politics. You have to get rough sometimes. But there was a level of dignity. And I remember when I went to the member for Castries North, and I said to him, listen to me, what we're doing about this winner takes all, and opposition politicians get nothing. Dr. Robert Lewis and I said to him that there is this money coming from the Taiwanese. Why don't you share it? Why don't you do something if it's opposition politicians can get something? We agreed, and then at that time, we in the opposition got some allocation. On other matters, when there was a hurricane, he called me in his office, and we agreed that there would be some allocation between opposition seats, and something happened, Mr. Speaker. So when he gets us to speak, we listen. And the member for Denry North always makes a point that he hasn't got a bag of cement. It's from the government when in opposition. Not the same thing I can say for the member for Viewfort North, for Castries North. But Mr. Speaker, when the member for Miko South gets up to speak, he cannot help himself. It's either he suffers from an illness that I can't describe, or he suffers from some sort of complex. Mr. Speaker, the things that the member from Miko South speaks about, you can't understand why a man can say these kind of things when he knows very well these things can easily be disputed and can easily be shown not to be true. But he insists in saying it, and he insists in allowing some people follow him and repeat it, and when they know very well it's not true, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in my rebuttal to what the minister, the member for Castries for Youth, Miko South, said, Mr. Speaker, I want to start from where my colleague, the Deputy Prime Minister, began. And I want to quote what he said. You can have a piece of land that is on the harbor. The piece of land is on the harbor. So everybody is clear that this is a piece of land by the end of Banans underneath Golden Hope. Underneath Golden Hope. 100,000 square feet underwater. Now, land in Castries, Mr. Speaker, goes from anywhere between 500 to 1,000 square feet. So, $1,000 a square foot. So, land at Golden Hope now is land in Castries. In Castries, that is right. That is what land is going for. So, the right is, when you talk about waterfront land, so I want to say this, first of all, Mr. Speaker, to have sold the land to a non-entity. Nobody knows her. Who is she? Has she done any work in St. Lucia? Okay, Mr. Speaker. A St. Lucian, so a person who has no track record of doing any development in St. Lucia, unless you want to go and study her lineage and then say her father is a person who is a developer. Mr. Speaker, there's a dirty trend in St. Lucian politics, perpetuated by the United Workers' Party, of bringing people's families into politics, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's heartbreaking. People's children are being dragged into politics, Mr. Speaker, in the nastiest and most demeaning and the most untruthful way, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have been a victim. I am a victim, but I'm not going to that now. But what I must say is when the member for Castries from Miku South gets up and he says that we celebrate what is best being St. Lucia. We cannot ask, Mr. Speaker, for other persons to hold us in the highest esteem if we allow ourselves to go, or to allow ourselves for politics to do that. So, Mr. Speaker, I felt very strongly about the content of a meme, and I know it has happened in the past, and I'm saying we need to do better. I said it from the get-go. Mr. Speaker, I love to see, Mr. Speaker, the members come always to the House saying today is a new beginning. So again, Mr. Speaker, I just want to make it clear whether the members on the opposite side accept the apology, accept the statements, I hope that they would in good faith, but the reality is we want to disassociate ourselves from one and any other one that may put St. Lucians in a disrespectful light, in a disgusting position. We are better. And in fact, if in fact we are going to fight crime, Mr. Speaker, these are the little things that make a big difference in terms of how we see and portray ourselves. So, Mr. Speaker, on that note, I thank you for your indulgence, and I'm hoping that we all, everyone in civil society, takes up the mantra that we are going to collectively listen ourselves, condemn, and ridicule anyone who does that. That was on the 22nd of March, Mr. Speaker. That's on the 22nd of March. And then, on yesterday, less than 10 days later, he calls somebody a non-entity. Nobody knows her. Who is she? Has she done any work in St. Lucia? Mr. Speaker, this is where the politics of St. Lucia has got, Mr. Speaker. And then you go on in social media and you denigrate people's children. You put their pictures up. You put an arrow directing to them so that they can be easily identified, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know how emotional the politics can get. You can easily identify them. That's the second time the picture of that young lady was put on the social media, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what kind of example are we setting in this country? What kind of example are we setting in this country, Mr. Speaker? When a former prime minister can put on the public record a non-entity. Nobody knows her. Who is she? When we're speaking about a youth economy, when we're speaking about getting young people involved, Mr. Speaker, that is so. That is the example that we set. That is the example we set, Mr. Speaker, for our country in the name of politics, Mr. Speaker. That's what we do. And our surrogates get on lives, on the television, and say the most bitter
bitter things about people's children. Mr. Speaker, I spoke about trust. Yesterday, you heard the member for Microsoft tell you, Mr. Speaker, that we were not speaking the truth when we spoke about Orange Grove, and he knew nothing about any courthouse decision as it relates to Orange Grove. He said, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, he said, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, the courthouse that the Prime Minister is making reference to was never part of the deal. The fact is that the regional court of St. Lucia is hosted in St. Lucia, and we are currently paying rent for the regional court in town. Is that not so? Okay. Who makes the decision to determine where regional court goes? Thank you. So by which ministry? Which ministry makes the decision? So the regional court. So the regional court, when they want to move somewhere, who did they go? They go to the Ministry of Justice. To the Ministry of Justice to determine. Mr. Speaker, the OECS Court of Appeal, the regional court, has been in St. Lucia for ages. There was no decision as to where the court is to be located, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the court has been complaining about space. Complaining about space, Mr. Speaker. Complaining about facilities. Complaining about the damn going no space for the judges because they need more judges, Mr. Speaker. You may recall, Mr. Speaker, the member from Microsoft, when he was talking about developments in St. Lucia and how it's his government that has the economy to do well, he spoke about the Diamond Mall. He said that the Diamond Mall was part of the reasons why St. Lucia was doing well, because he had done the Diamond Mall. But he came yesterday and he said, the courthouse, and his exact words, Mr. Speaker, is, there was never a contract signed to have caused the regional court to go where? It was never. That's what he said. There is so the regional court, and I quote, when they want to move to somewhere, who do they go? They go to the Ministry of Justice. It's for the Ministry of Justice to make the determination as to where they're going to go. This is nothing to do with the building. Yes, quotation, the leader of the opposition. He said, that is nothing to do with the building. So don't try to make it. If you don't want the regional court to go there, you don't have to agree. There was never a contract signed to, of course, the regional court to go where? Never. Mr. Speaker, this is the same gentleman as Prime Minister who was speaking to the Chief Justice on a number of occasions about the Court of Appeal, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to read you a letter, Mr. Speaker, which clarifies it. Orange Grove Plaza Limited is written to Mr. Darrell Moncho, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Public Service. That was the time when he was Permanent Secretary, Minister. And it's clear, Ministry of the Public Service, they are the ones who deal with rental of buildings. Who was Minister for the Public Service? The Honorable Prime Minister at the time. But here, he says, go to the Ministry of Justice. Listen to the letter. The main purpose of this letter is to provide the date 17th December 2021. The main purpose of this letter is to provide clarity on the course 2021. Listen. We were inquiring as to what's happened to that building. The main purpose of this letter is to provide clarity on the cost of the fit out for the Eastern Caribbean Central Court at Orange Grove. The gentleman who says there was no agreement. Lease agreement between the Orange Grove Plaza Limited and the St. Lucia government / Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. Through discussions with the government of St. Lucia, the government of St. Lucia determined that the property known as the Dia Mall was in an area with great potential. Understanding the objective of the Castries redevelopment program, we acceded to the request of the government of St. Lucia and began actively pursuing the redevelopment of the abandoned project and determined that the space would be suitable for government and commercial entities. When completed, the total building will provide 177,000 square feet of administrative and commercial accommodation in 2 separate buildings. A lease agreement has already been executed with the government of St. Lucia for 78,406 square feet for a 15-year period with a revisionary clause, after which this space will be owned by the government of St. Lucia. The ground floor of that building will be tenanted by retail stores, a vision facility, and a supermarket. A draft rental lease agreement for the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in the other building is currently at the offices of the Attorney General for review. That's the man who said he knows nothing about it. The agreed leasable space is $71,945 square foot at a rental rate of EC $5 per square foot. With respect to the fit-out lease, which referred to as the secondary lease, we are confirming a maximum cost of EC $3 per square foot for a period of 7 years, after which the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court or the government of St. Lucia will then own the furniture and fixtures. The space will be fully customized to meet the functional, security, and other specific requirements of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, including a prisoner holding facilities. The building shares one common wall with the other buildings, but is designed to operate independently. The aspect of the project would be implemented using a turnkey arrangement. You see what was the turnkey arrangement? Yesterday he said it was the government buildings. Conceptual designs based on user requirements have already been approved and signed off by the Eastern. Listen to that. Conceptual designs based on user requirements have already been approved and signed off by the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court with several iterations. Copies of designs will be forwarded on the separate cover, and a presentation can be arranged if required. Now, we have provided clarity and confirmation on the fit-out costs for the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. We are looking forward to moving to the finalization of the execution of the primary lease agreement with at $5 a square foot. We look forward to working towards successful completion, and the letter is signed by the owners of Orange Grove Plaza Limited. Mr. Speaker, the member for Microsoft came in this honorable house and told you that you can go if you want. It's the Ministry of Justice that is dealing with that courthouse, that building, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, do you think, Mr. Speaker, it's right that for the sake of politics, somebody can come and stand in this honorable house and say that kind of thing, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, it is sad, Mr. Speaker. That's why young people do not go into politics. It is sad, very sad. Because when someone can come in open courts, in open, for the whole world to see, and say things that are obviously not true. But let me tell you why he's saying things are obvious. Let me tell you why he's saying that. Because he was complaining about rental expenses in the estimates. Now, here's a government acting in good faith. If a prime minister or government begins negotiations with a foreign investor, and the investor, based on the word of the government, puts millions of dollars in a building, on the word. First of all, there is one signed lease agreement for the office space. And let me tell you how much that will cost, Mr. Speaker. The office space that the last government signed for, that will cost the government of St. Lucia for 16 and a half years, $313,624 a month. $3,763,488 EC per month. That's what they signed for. And it will cost, Mr. Speaker, and it will cost a further $12 million for retrofitting. Now, that is the deal that he signed with the Orange Grove people, Mr. Speaker. Further, there is a maintenance charge. The maintenance charge, providing the service plus 10% of a management fee. The supply and removal of electricity, a portion. So that was what he signed. That's what the government signed, right? For the government buildings. But the same leader of opposition is talking about rent for government buildings. What do you expect us to do? What you want us to do is just walk away from that whole agreement. And that is what many people think we should do. But what I'm thinking of is the reputation of St. Lucia. The reputation of the word of the government of St. Lucia. And remember, for Shozel, you're a banker, you're a professional banker. You make a lot of banking decisions based on reputation. It is called know your customer. The reputation of a customer. If the government, and that is why we had to pay Cayman City, because you need to protect the reputation of the government, and much the chagrin of one of my colleagues, because my colleagues believe that this is a travesty. But that's why we paid Cayman City, because the reputation of the country, we are a small country. All we have is our reputation, Mr. Speaker. That's all we have. And this is why you cannot be callous with people's individual reputations or be callous to the reputation of the country. So here's the gentleman coming to the honorable house and almost denying the fact that he knows anything about the courthouse building. After he's had several discussions with the learned Chief Justice, after they've done all the drawings together, after the Eastern Caribbean Court has approved the drawings, Mr. Speaker, the gentleman is saying he knows, go ahead, Ministry of Justice, do what you want for it. Mr. Speaker, really? But what will they do? They'll go on Facebook tonight and attack my daughter. That is the response. That be the response, not the response to the facts, but the response is going to be a personal attack on me and a personal attack on my daughter and my family. That's going to be the response. So I wait for it. Mr. Speaker, you see the dilemma I find myself in? Let me tell you further, Mr. Speaker, the cost of what the government for the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal. The rent, and that is including once the shoe fully fitted out, would be $504,000 per month. Thereafter, an increase of 10% will be applied every 5 years. This represents an increase of $360,000 per month for rent for the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal. And a security deposit of 1 month. Mr. Speaker, so in the estimate, we put in $5 million because we were not sure when that will finish to protect St. Lucia's reputation. But the leader of the opposition comes in here. In one breath, he says that was his work and that's how we achieved a surplus. By the next breath, he denies it completely. What do you do, Mr. Speaker? What do you do? What do I tell these men and women? What do I tell them? Mr. Speaker, I move on. The leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, said that St. Lucia is doing well because of what he did, because of his work, because of the things that he did, Mr. St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia experienced a 22% drop in GDP after COVID. The highest drop in Latin America and the Caribbean. That's an economy that was doing well. That was an economy that was doing very well, Mr. Speaker. And COVID did not only attack St. Lucia. COVID attacked the entire Latin America, the whole of Latin America, Mr. Speaker. Now, let me tell you some of what happened in the other countries. Let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, what happened in the other countries as far as the drop in GDP was concerned. And that's a country you say you run so well. And the figures will show in a while, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia's drop was 24.4% and the Bahamas 23.8% decline in GDP after COVID 2020. Barbados 13.7%. Belize 13.7%. Let's go closer home. Grenada 13.8%. Jamaica 10%. St. Vincent and the Grenadines 5.3% drop in 2020. St. Lucia 24.4%. Guyana is the only one with an increase of 43.5%. That is how the economy decreased, or the loss of GDP after COVID. St. Lucia had the highest. But you know why St. Lucia had the highest, Mr. Speaker? Because St. Lucia's economy had already begun to show signs, downside risk, before COVID. So when COVID struck, it took us over the board. But during COVID, we borrowed over $300 million. But that $300 million, Mr. Speaker, less than $20 million of these dollars were used for direct support to people. The direct support came from the NIC. That's where the direct support came, from the NIC, Mr. Speaker. And we've pledged at some point when the time is right to pay the NIC people back the money. that is where it came from, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, during that time, what did the government do? They were busy doing DFCs for elections. They were busy doing roads for election time, Mr. Speaker. So that $300 million that they borrowed, because of the weakness of the economy at that time, they had to take it to pay salaries, and that is what manifests itself in the figures that we inherited. Of course, COVID was a factor. Of course, we know COVID was a factor, Mr. Speaker. But what came after COVID was the Ukraine war, which we'll deal with in a few seconds. So, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition goes and he quotes figures, and in wanting to demean the primary surplus that we have achieved, in wanting to demean the fact that we've reduced our overall deficit, to demean it, Mr. Speaker, tries to quote some figures, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have an extract from the Economic and Social Review. You may recall, Mr. Speaker, that the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party came into government in the year 20, lost government, came into government in the year 2011. We lost government, right? And we lost government in the year 2011, right? We lost election in the year 2011. We won, sorry. We won in 2011. Look at what they inherited. A current balance of 59.3%, a surplus. $59 million surplus. By the time we went into 2012, the current balance was minus $52 million. Huh? They inherited that. Then we got it minus. We had to take it because minus $50 million. Then we bought it 1 year. It went minus $3 million. Then in 2014 it went back up $36 million. In 2015, $82 million. 2015-16, and when we gave it to them in 2017, it was $92 million. That is, and when we gave it, the overall balance was $79 million, the overall balance. And we took it at $227 million. So between these years, we brought it down to $79 million. That's what we gave them in 2017. Social and Economic Review. That is when the member of yourself was Minister of Finance. These are the facts. These are the facts, Mr. Speaker. These are the facts. And these weren't printed by me. These are the facts, and you can check it out in the Social and Economic Review. And when they got it in 2019, in 2016, they got it 79 million. That's what they got, Mr. Speaker. So what they inherited was a platform of sustainability, a platform that we could move on from. And by 2019, before COVID, we already were in deficit, current balance deficit of $43 million before COVID hit. Before COVID hit. Before COVID. That's where we were. So you understand why we had problems? And right now, we've taken it from last year. We've taken it from, Mr. Speaker, when we got it, last year, we had anticipated that we would have in 2022-2023. When we took it in 21, our overall deficit was $224 million, and our primary deficit was $156 million. We took it from there, and we brought it into 1 year to have a surplus of $29 million. And we brought down the overall deficit from $444 million to $257 million. And the Prime Minister and the member for Microsoft speaks about revenue. So he says that we collected more revenue, so we should bring down the price of gas. Mr. Speaker, the price of gas is a function of international markets. We know nothing about it, we don't control that. He was the one who raised it by 150. He was the one, purportedly to put it in a logbox. That's what he said. The logbox, we have looked for the logbox. When the Deputy Prime Minister is acting as finance, I've asked him to look for the logbox. When he's acting, I've asked him to look for the logbox. When he is in the ministry, I asked him to look for the logbox. Nobody can find the logbox. That logbox cannot be found. He brought it up by 150, Mr. Speaker. But we have subsidized fuel and subsidized LPG in particular. We had budgeted to subsidize it by $8. Sometimes you end up at paying as much as $20 for the subsidy on cooking gas, Mr. Speaker. But because of the buoyancy of the economy and because of the fact that there had been some inflation, our excise tax consumption has increased. But the leader of the opposition tells us we should allow gas to be sold at $13.95. But remember, he's the one, thank you, he's the one who increased the tax in it. If we had allowed gas to be sold at $13.95, Mr. Speaker, we would have had to subsidize petroleum products by over $80 million. That is what will be the cost of that. And what will happen, Mr. Speaker? What will happen? Even if we have an increase in revenue, and I said in my estimates, we still have a current deficit. We are still spending more than we are getting. What we did is we had a primary surplus in that we can pay our interest, not all of our current expenses. If we continue on this track, Mr. Speaker, we will have to seek interference from the International Monetary Fund, because we cannot continue to live beyond our means in this way. So what are we doing? We are making adjustments. We are reducing expenditure. We are making adjustments. But that was the same member when he was Minister of Finance, reduced VAT by 2.5%. And up to today, no one can tell me what did the reduction of VAT do for them at the supermarket. There is no one who can say what the reduction of VAT did for them at the supermarket, Mr. Speaker. So the member from Microsoft wants us to continue in a trend of deficit to reach a point where we have to go to the International Monetary Fund to help us, because it can't continue at that rate. And the same member who we have to spend $46 million a year to pay DFCs for roads, some roads to nowhere. That is the position that we found ourselves, Mr. Speaker. And the member speaks about the economy and how we mismanage the economy, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, our deficit remains, and we have to make adjustments for our deficit. And to make it worse, Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia has the lowest VAT in the region. So when he speaks about other countries, St. Lucia has the lowest VAT in the region, Mr. Speaker. And St. Lucia has subsidized petroleum products and subsidized LPG gas, Mr. Speaker. sometimes $20 per cylinder. Lucia. So anytime a consumer buys 20-pound cylinder of gas, at some point the government put in $20 for him. Mr. Speaker, the member for Microsoft talked about subscription and grants. And make that give first. Subscription and grants. You all taking money to enjoy yourself. Give people subscription and grants, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again the truth. Mr. Speaker, do you know? He cited the grants in the Prime Minister's office and saying that these grants were because we were wasting, you're giving people things. Mr. Speaker, you know what these grants related to? They related to moving the grants, moving the subscriptions that we make to the Association of Crime and Commissioners of Police, the subscriptions to the Regional Security System, to the grants, the subscriptions to the OECS Central Secretariat. We moved it from these areas and put it in the office of the Prime Minister, because these are the direct results under the portfolio of the Prime Minister. That is what caused the grants to go up. Moving up an entry of moving the OECS Central Secretariat, $3 million. Our commitments, the regional and regional security system, $2 million. 2 and 3.5. That is what caused the grants to go up, Mr. Speaker. Grants and subscriptions. It's in one block, grants and subscriptions. So that's what made the grants go up in the Prime Minister's office. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition speaks about interest rates. Mr. Speaker, everyone knows that interest rates have increased. Everyone knows that. Mr. Speaker, interest rates have increased. Interest rates have increased. It was 1%. It was 1%, Mr. Speaker, when he was in office. Right now, it's at 5% and climbing. So we had to make a projection for increasing interest rates, because the loans that we have, they are variable interest rates, Mr. Speaker, and interest rates in the national market are increasing all the time. Mr. Speaker, he speaks about salaries and wages, and he says that's job to the boys, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, do you know the reason why salaries and wages have gone up is because we paid civil servants their back pay, and we paid them their pay increase without any acrimony. We paid them their pay increase, we paid them their back pay. Even some units that did not negotiate, we paid them the same amount as everybody else. That is why it went up. And retiring benefits, Mr. Speaker, retiring benefits, when people work hard in the civil service and they leave, those who do not contribute to the NIC, we must pay them their benefits. And that is why retiring benefits went up, Mr. Speaker. Not because there was any massive increase in employment, it's because the retiring benefits for these people went up, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, grants and subscriptions. Let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, where grants and subscriptions increase. And I want to ask you, Mr. Speaker, whether you think, in your good judgment, that is not the right place. That was not necessary, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask you whether you feel it wasn't necessary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, grants and subscriptions. Here's where they went up. $250,000 for the marketing board. For agriculture, we subscribed $250,000 to them, Mr. Speaker. Grants and subscriptions. These are the increases that he's complaining about, Mr. Speaker. These are increases he's complaining about, Mr. Speaker. $7 million increase in grants and subscriptions. $3 million increase in subvention for St. Jude. We shouldn't do that. $3.6 million increase in subvention to the Millennium Heights complex. $10,000 increase in subvention to Diabetic and Hypertension Association. $20,000 to cater for Childhood Development Center. $10,000 for the Autism Society. $20,000 to Cerebral Palsy Association. $300,000 increase to cater for payment of medical assistance for the less fortunate. I shouldn't do that. These are the increases that he speaks about in grants and subscriptions, Mr. Speaker. These are the increases. Grants and contributions. Another $1 million increase due to increases in provisions for subvention to the Cornerstone Humanitarian Society. $20,000 increase. Cicero's Children's Home at Cicero, $20,000. Marion Home, $20,000. St. Lucie Home, $20,000. National Council for the Disabled, $20,000. St. Lucia Red Cross, $20,000. Viewfort Children's Home, $20,000. Housing allowance, $79,000. Our Boys Matter increased by $76,000. Subvention to feed the poor, $20,000. Rise St. Lucia subvention, $20,000. And listen to me, Mr. Speaker. The public assistance vote reflects an increase of 29% or $5.8 million resulting from provisions assistance to meeting the needs of the most vulnerable and the shock response social projection projects. Mr. Speaker, that's where it went up. That's where it increased. It's not telling people go and look for the $1,500. That's Mr. Speaker. That is why grants and subscription, and that's the same member that says we're not doing enough for. Do something to them. What are you doing for them? We must do more. We want to do more. We are doing more. But that is why the grants and subscriptions went up, Mr. Speaker. That is why it went up. Then we had an additional subscription to the increase in subvention to Export St. Lucia. They're doing a marvelous job in St. Lucia's export development. And I must give kudos, Mr. Speaker, to the Executive Director of Export St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, so that is why grants and Mr. Speaker, this is why grants and subscriptions increase, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, then he speaks about, oh, you all have parties hosted. Mr. Speaker, you know why it went up? Because St. Lucia had to cater for the visit of Prince Edward. That's why it went up. St. Lucia had to cater for the visit of Prince Edward. So hosting and entertainment went up. He speaks about consultancy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I made a point in my budget, in my estimates debate, that as the capital projects came into maturity, that consultancies would have to increase. But let me tell you a little story about consultancies under him. You see, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if it's a lack of memory loss or it's the idea that you say anything.
Prime Minister, you have 10 minutes left.
Oh, I have time for that in my budget, sir?
Yes, 1 hour, but you can get an extension.
Can I get, Mr. Speaker, just 15 more minutes? I'll take it. I wouldn't, sorry.
I can't see that. Member for Dennery North.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to invoke Standing Order 4210 in order to allow the Prime Minister an additional 30 minutes within which to complete his presentation.
Honourable members, the question is that Standing Order 3210 be invoked to allow the Prime Minister an additional 30 minutes in which to conclude his presentation. I now put a question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. Ayes have it. Extension granted.
Thank you very much, colleague Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So we spoke about subscription grants. So we got whole sentiment. Now consultancy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the consultancies are mandated by the lending organization. There is a big project called Unfolding the Blue Economy, which will help us in our food security, etc. That is mandated that the World Bank, who give us the money, mandate that there's supposed to be a certain degree of consultancies. Then we look into the matter of blue bonds, which is something we'll discuss in the policy statement. To deal with our debt, we look into to transfer our debt, to reorganize our debt into something called blue bonds, where we use our ocean, and you know, Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia has more, the region has more sea space than land space. So we have to use our sea space and the work by the Minister of the Environment to protect our oceans, unfolding the blue economy, tying it into a blue bonds so we can assist in our debt sustainability, Mr. Speaker. That's what we're doing. That's where the consultancy are. That's where the consultancies are. That's where they are. But let me tell you what they did about consultancies. Mr. Speaker, the World Bank dictates that all consultancies must be tendered. When the tendering process was too cumbersome, just like the grocery highway that they speak about. And remember, if you yourself can clarify that. Just like the grocery highway. That's why the grocery highway is where it is today. The people of St. Lucia have only the United Locust Party to blame for the grocery highway being how it is today. Only them. Nobody else. They had to take full blame for the grocery highway, for the congestion and the problems in there. Full blame. So, Mr. Speaker, you know what they did? They said to the World Bank, we want to see who we give the consultancies. The World Bank said, no, show me. You know what it is, Mr. Speaker? They removed the consultancy part from the project and said to the World Bank, we'll pay for it ourselves. And they did it by direct award. So the World Bank is ready to pay for the consultants. They say, no, don't do that. We take it away and we give it to whoever you want. And I will not tell you who they gave it to, Mr. Speaker. I'm not able to mention people's names in this honorable house. But Mr. Speaker, speaking about interest rates, that's the same Minister of Finance who signed a contract to give people interest per day. Yeah. The same man, you know. 1% per day. This is the same Minister of Finance who speaks about interest rates. So, what they did, Mr. Speaker, is that they took the consultancy away from the projects and they decided that they would pay it by direct award. But we, in the capital projects and the capital project that I mentioned to you, Mr. Speaker, these capital projects are very important to us, and we are ensuring that the consultancies go the right way so that the projects can materialize and come to the natural established way. And this year, we are very conservative in that we only put projects that we know can happen this year. Unfolding the blue economy, St. Jude's Hospital, Mr. Speaker, and during the policy phase of this discussion, of this debate, I'll tell you a lot about St. Jude, Mr. Speaker. Many exciting things happen at St. Jude, Mr. Speaker. And to their chagrin, St. Jude Hospital is going to be completed. It's going to be completed, Mr. Speaker. St. Jude Hospital is going to be completed. So, Mr. Speaker, he spoke about street lighting. So you're speaking about the all the time. What I'm street lighting, Mr. Speaker. Do you know? And remember, if you would solve, if he wants, will bear testimony to what I'm saying. We had completed negotiations in May 2016 for replacement of all the LED lights in St. Lucia all the sodium lights in St. Lucia with LED lights. It was a signed, sealed loan from the Caribbean Development Bank. When they came into government, Mr. Speaker, you heard about the Pajora letter. And that's a cause. And the Pajora letter appeared. And when the Pajora letter appeared, Mr. Speaker, the funding, the loan from the Caribbean Development Bank was cancelled. A loan for $9 million cancelled. Up to today, the Caribbean Development Bank can't understand why that happened. You know why it happened, Mr. Speaker? Because the Caribbean Development Bank, they had waived some of the procurement requirements to say that Lucia should be the contributing party working with them because of Lucia's experience, because Lucia had been involved in that business. Because it was determined who the contracting party should be, they cancelled. And the Pajora letter appeared. Yes, he became a big shareholder. So, Mr. Speaker, of course, the Pajora letter fell through, and they introduced a firm called KLED, Mr. Speaker. That was in 20, Mr. Speaker, when the leader of the opposition talking about not doing anything on performance, I want solutions to just go back a little bit and tell me one project that was done by the last government, one. Which they denying now? Which not working now? Tell me, only what the last government had was ideas. And that's what the boast about, we had ideas. Yes. And my friend from the library will say, Batem Popot. And I would say, flashing mirrors, Mr. Speaker. So what happened? So, KLED, that was, they were about KLED in you. They were about KLED in. That's in about 2019. COVID, okay, give COVID jump up, COVID came, Mr. Speaker. They left government in 2021, the people put them out, and nothing on KLED. We came back and we began negotiations with KLED because I understand about government continuity. So KLED, when he made discussions, we had discussions with them, KLED got St. Lucia had to approve it, a guarantee from a company called MIGA, MIGA, that's a company that gives guarantees to private sector firms once they get the money from the World Bank. So that the local counterpart will not have to get so much exposure in terms of guarantees. I'm pleased to tell you, after these negotiations, back and forth, clean up arrangements, back and forth, I'm pleased to tell you, Mr. Speaker, and colleagues will be happy to hear that the street lighting project is on course, and the first set of lights will arrive in St. Lucia at the end of April this year. And that has been confirmed, Mr. Speaker, by a press release from Washington. From Washington, not from me, because I would never come and say that here if I wasn't sure. From Washington, Mr. Speaker, and here's what it reads. MIGA has issued guarantees to KLED Capital and CIFI LATAM to support installation, operation, and servicing of a modernized streetlights network in St. Lucia. The project consists of replacing all 22,000 of the island's sodium streetlights with LEDs and installing 2,460 new LED streetlights. This will lead to a greenhouse gas emission reduction. Mr. Environment, would you like to hear that? This will lead to a greenhouse gas emission reduction of 5,000 tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent to CO2e per year, while increasing light levels by over 40% across the road network. We're heading for net zero. MIGA's guarantees total $11.7 million, are covering an equity investment by KLED for 15 years and an 8-year loan. St. Lucia depends heavily on imported petroleum products to power its economy and among the highest electricity tariffs in the world. The government of St. Lucia is working to transition to a lower carbon economy and undertake initiatives to promote climate resilience, energy efficiencies. This project is an important initiative that is consistent with the government's climate change policy and demonstrates its commitment to increase energy efficiency that reduces the carbon footprint. The first project MIGA is supporting in St. Lucia will help the country meet its national climate targets. That is what we are doing, Mr. Speaker. So that's what we are doing. And here's what. Energy savings from the LED street lights are estimated to about 6.8 GWh per year, corresponding to monetary savings of about $2.3 million per year, which will enable the government to focus on other developmental initiatives. High electricity rates have a negative effect on businesses and people in St. Lucia. World Bank Director Lilia Burnick. Reducing them to the World Bank is endorsing it, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to tell you that's going to happen. But I want to thank Lucia, Mr. Speaker, for their support in the street light project. And I understand that Lucia will also be ordering some lights for St. Lucia, LED lights. So my colleagues will have an abundance of lights to shine. Mr. Speaker, and I want to show you how this government operates. And he talked about consultancy fees. Part of this consultancy fees, Mr. Speaker, is for the geothermal project in Soufrière. Part of it. So again, you see, this is how we do it, Mr. Speaker. Blue bonds, blue economy, LED lights, environmental sustainability to reduce our carbon footprint. That is how this government works, Mr. Speaker. Work with a plan. But you'll hear more of that in the policy debate, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I thought I was rather disturbed by the mannerisms and the things that the minister, the parliamentary representative, for Microsoft did, Mr. Speaker. And you know, I don't like to do that, but I must, Mr. Speaker. I must do it. Because when people talk about traveling, and he came and he accused the minister for sports of traveling, Mr. Speaker, and I know I'm going to get blasted on their social media for that. They're going to say most things about me now. Refund for accommodation. Talk about traveling. July 19th, 2019. And that bill comes from a hotel called One Ham Yard. Remember for people of you know that hotel? One Ham Yard. You know it? So, Mr. Speaker, you know, these things. Accommodation per night. 1,795 pounds sterling plus 359 pounds sterling. 2,154 pounds per night. 2,154 pounds per night. 6 nights, what the government paid was the government paid for 6 nights $48,981. $48,000 for 6 nights. Mr. Speaker, I had to do it because too many lies and too much righteousness, too much perceived righteousness is being peddled in Mr. Speaker, and we have been challenged. Do this, do that, do this. Right now, Mr. Speaker, we'll take the challenges because there is a lot of information that we are going to disclose because they challenge us. Because Mr. Speaker, we won elections in July and we went around doing the business of the country. Doing the business of the country. We didn't interfere with anybody. Mr. Speaker, this is the first government that has kept top civil servants when they change like that. We kept all the permanent secretaries except one. We kept the commissioner of police. We kept the head of fire. We kept the head of we kept the CMO. We kept all, but the accusers of victimization, the accusers of it, Mr. Speaker. We kept all these people. We worked with them. The arrogance, Mr. Speaker, of government ministers never rose his head with my ministers. And I speak to them all the time. I tell them, don't interfere in the civil service. Let the civil service do what they have to do. Sometimes they're very annoyed with me for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these guys, but they just come and they talk and attack us, Mr. Speaker. And right now the attacks have got personal and way below the belt. So I put you on notice, Mr. Speaker, that there's going to be many revelations made in His Honorable House in short order. Mr. Speaker, you will hear the whole story about the vaccines. You'll hear the whole story about the land at Mount Pleasant, Mr. Speaker. You'll hear the whole story about the John Compton Dam Desilting. Yeah. You'll hear the whole story about the Super SSDF, Mr. Speaker. That's not right. You had a whole story about the road, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, we have been challenged. We've been attacked. We've been accused, Mr. Speaker. But I can put on notice, Mr. Speaker, that these attacks are going to be more vicious because the stories will come out, Mr. Speaker. So, 6 nights of a hotel. You pay $48,981.96. 6 nights of a hotel. 6 nights. That means, Mr. Speaker, for one night, Mr. Speaker, the hotel was 6 divided by $48,000. $8,000 a night for one night in a hotel. You think that any of us, when a member of Youth for South, could ever do that? He would write the church, you take it from our salary, won't you? Yeah, I know that. I'm Mr. Speaker, and I'm in the same. Yeah, and I'm sure neither member of Youth North, and surely not for me. And these men and women know they can't do that. You think any cabinet minister can tell me to go on a trip and the hotel is $8,000 a night? So, Mr. Speaker, the rebuttal, Mr. Speaker, is going to be attack on my daughter. That's the rebuttal. I'm waiting for it. Mr. Speaker, I have been you see, Mr. Speaker, recently, Mr. Speaker, Philip J. Pierre has become the flavor of the month. So my daughter got attacked, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make a little point, Mr. Speaker, about this attack, these personal attacks, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when somebody attacks you personally, and you know there is truth, then you know that there is truth in some of the attacks. Then you feel very down, you feel concerned, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, what I'm concerned about is what that causes other people who want to get into politics. The impression it makes on young people who want to make a contribution to the country, Mr. Speaker. That's what concerns me, Mr. Speaker. That's what concerns me. Because when people just say things about you that have absolutely no truth, and they cannot in any way prove it, and they never, and the member from Miku saw, Mr. Speaker, that is why we do not accept the so-called apology that he made in his honorable house. Collectively and individually, we do not accept it. Because we know it's not sincere. Because that's the same member in the last election. They have a thing on me, they say I have a speech impediment. That's what they say about me. I have a speech impediment. impediment. I want to ask one person if when I speak to them, they never understand what I say. One person. I want to ask one person in the whole world if when I speak they can't understand what I say. But they say, yeah. But they say I have a speech impediment. So when they ask the member for Miku South when he was Prime Minister, somebody put press him in, and when he had to lead the opposition where there's money for the hospital, what did he say? You know what he did? That's what he did. That's what he did, Mr. Speaker. That's what he did. But everybody has forgotten that. But Mr. Speaker, I will never get personal with any politician during my career. Never. All of them that believe they don't have sardine and corned beef, let them go ahead. All of them that believe that they don't have sardine and corned beef tin, let them go ahead. But I will never get personal. Never. Never. My integrity doesn't allow me to get personal, Mr. Speaker. And my parents would turn in their grave if they ever heard me go on a man's children and his wife and his girlfriend in politics. He said, Mr. Speaker, I will never do it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and the public of St. Lucia is listening, you know. Let me tell you something. Let me read for you, Mr. Speaker, something that was sent to me by somebody who was concerned. And that person is not a politician. That person is not a politician. I have never experienced this level of nastiness, the dirtiness, the lies, the acrimony, the racism, the institutionalized corruption as we have today. And this has started with the advent of a certain set of people in politics. It is scary and sad because I strongly believe that this lawlessness has pervaded every aspect of our society. That is the opinion of someone about St. Lucian politics. Where's this name, Mr. Speaker? And you've never heard, Mr. Speaker, I can bring it up, Mr. Speaker, because it was said in this honor, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, apart from the fact they say I have a speech impediment, they have said other things which, Mr. Speaker, I come to this honorable house and I say to people, my father was a policeman. I should not say that. I come and I say to the young people of this country that you have to aspire to get to be the best you can and to aspire to be Prime Minister of St. Lucia, no matter who you are and no matter where you come from. That's what I preach. But inside here, come and talk about somebody as a non-entity. Who knows them? And that's the difference, Mr. Speaker. I preach that we must aim at the highest heights for anybody, regardless of where you come from. Whether you come from the George Charles Boulevard, whether you come from the Mang, whether you come from Bruceville, whether you come from Fuller Show, whether you come from Bellevue, whether you come from Odlum City, you must strive to be the best you can. This is my philosophy, Mr. Speaker. Ordinary Riviere. This is my philosophy. But they attack me for it. I say to people in St. Lucia that never judge a man because of where he came from or where he was. Judge him for what he is now and how he has aspired to greatness. I tell members of the police force to not get involved in sexual harassment and treat women with dignity and respect. And I say that your name or your complexion should not be anything that will determine the job or how you aspire in this society. That's what I say. These are the values that I preach. These are the values, Mr. Speaker. And all my life, you can see these values coming true. So that is why they figure they can attack me on personal things, Mr. Speaker. Every one of the attacks is a lie. Exactly, but attack me on the management of the economy. Every word is a lie, Mr. Speaker. Every word. House at Capel State, not true. BMW given by not true. Daughter, not true. Godson, worse. Godson, worse, Mr. Speaker. Then, to make it worse, I went, and you see, the scorn and the contempt and the disregard that is about for people. I went to Viewport, Mr. Speaker. Remember yourself, you were there, but I didn't say I was going. I went to Viewport South, Mr. Speaker, and I went, Mr. Speaker, you can ask my colleagues. Everybody knows that I like this concurs nonsense. I like that. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows it. So, Mr. Speaker, I went to a shop in Viewport, in Bruceville. The fellas there were very happy. Because, Mr. Speaker, what they don't understand about me is, and that is why they underestimated me. My roots in the politics is very deep. I lined with the member for Viewport South in Viewport. In fact, my father is from Viewport North. Yes. They don't know that. Deep roots, deeply rooted, Mr. Speaker. So I went into Viewport South. It was Bruceville I went to. So I went there, and a guy took me in the shop, and he said to me, boss, come and see a shop that, he said, Kenny, help me to build. In the Mang, right? Mang. That Kenny help me to build. So I went in there, and I said to the guy, give me a thing of chips there. You understand? So, you see, Mr. Speaker, what they don't understand that I have that connection with people that they don't have. I had just come. So I took the chips, and the guy said, boss man, hold that. So I sat on the thing, and I opened the chips, and I eaten it. So they decide that I look like a chimpanzee. You understand? Now you know why they said so? Because they had put a call out in Unipac. Try to see what we can do to counteract the Prime Minister's visit to Viewport South. They put a call out. A call went out. So when he comes and he plays innocent, and he doesn't know, he's a contributor to United Park. You understand? When they play, don't know. A call went out, Mr. Speaker. Try to see, make recommendations. Make recommendations. That investigation is coming too. Yes, there are people who have drawn government salary for years. That's going to come too. That's coming too, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I tell my colleagues to brace themselves. Brace. Because the attacks from them are going to be worse and more vicious. So what happened is that, so we went, so United Park.
Prime Minister, you have 10 minutes left.
United Park, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm finishing. United Park put out go get him. And this guy came out with the chimpanzee connotation. Mr. Speaker, but everybody knows I don't like a chimpanzee. A good looking fellow like me. I mean, so if I worry about it, I can worry about it. So these things are petty things, nasty, child. Be right. They used to attack me for wearing sunglasses. Richard. One day I go and I see all them have sunglasses. I say, what? So, Mr. Speaker, that's a lighter note, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Seriously, we really need to change that culture in St. Lucia. That's way into. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank members for the contribution to these estimates. The policy statement is in the last Tuesday in April, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what these statements sought to do, they sought to consolidate St. Lucia, but not allowing it to stagnate. And it's a difficult task. Consolidation without stagnation in an environment that is very, 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 very difficult, Mr. Speaker. After COVID came the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war caused serious disruptions. The difference between COVID and the Ukraine war is that during COVID, the whole country stopped. During the Ukraine war, the whole country began to move, but the levers of movement were not oiled enough. So you find shipping was a problem, supply chain issues, up to now, absence of pilots, absence of airlift, etc., Mr. Speaker. So that is a double whammy. But I must say, the country is working together. I want to thank my colleagues. My colleagues, sometimes we have some discussions on issues, sometimes opinions vary, but I must say I have the fullest cooperation from the cabinet of the government of St. Lucia. And I want to thank them, and I really want to thank them for that, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the civil service, the Minister of Finance, in understanding that we treat them as professionals, and their job is to give us the best professional advice, and to understand we will take the decisions based on the professional advice that they give us. But the decision making is ours. I want to thank especially, Mr. Speaker, the members of the St. Lucia Police Force. Mr. Speaker, 99.9% of members of the police force are hardworking, good policemen, sincere, but there are a 0.5% that needs to change. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank them. The pressure has been on them recently, Mr. Speaker, but they are producing. In the policy statement, I will tell you some of the initiatives that we go there, and I want to thank the member for Chozel. He offered to assist as far as that's concerned, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the member Chozel is basically a good guy, in bad company. And I've said to him that there is nothing wrong in changing your mind. Footballers pay for Manchester United and they go to Liverpool. They still play football. Yes, they win Chelsea and they go to Arsenal. They still play football. They even live serious teams and go to places, much as if your team is bad. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. The policy statement is coming, and I think we're on the right track, and together, St. Lucia, we'll make St. Lucia progress. Thank you very much.
Member for Dennery North.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stands adjourned. Send it aye.
Honorable members, the question is that this House stands adjourned sine die. And now put the question. Yeah, good. Members, I was just reminded that if I didn't pose the question, the motion would not be. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. It has been a long time. Honorable members, the question is that The Honorable House of Assembly do adopt the report of the Standing Finance Committee on the estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2023-2024 in the sum of $1,856,719,000, and do agree that the said sum do form a charge against the consolidated fund and other funds of the state of St. Lucia. I now put a question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Now we can go to the...
Mr. Speaker, I now move a motion for this House to be adjourned. Send it aye.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do stand adjourned sine die. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sit in adjourned.
Expenditure to the tune of $8,856,719,000. 2023-2024 as a charge against the consolidated fund. In his rebuttal, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Pierre lamented the recent lack of civility in the politics of St. Lucia, introduced, as he said, quote, by the leader of the opposition and member for Micoud South, who left the House yesterday following his presentation. At the time, the member for Castries Central was on his feet. Today, he was not present in the House. I'm told that one should never argue with idiots, for they will drag you down and beat you with experience. We are reminded by the playwright William Shakespeare that no legacy is so rich as honesty, and nobility is not a birthright. It's defined by one's actions. St. Lucia is the home of every St. Lucian, not someone's throne. Today in the House, we heard from the member for Castries South in the person of the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism, the Honorable Ernest Hilaire. He was followed by the member for Babonneau, who wanted to refute certain statements made by the leader of the opposition, and finally the Prime Minister summed up. We'll be back here on April the 25th, the last Tuesday in April, for the Appropriations Bill, or as one would call it, the policy statement. First, with the throne speech from Governor General, as is the acting Governor General, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Errol Charles. I am Winston Springer, reporting from the St. Lucia House of Assembly. Until we meet again on the 25th of April. Bye now.